through it
I mean, it's Capcom.
while we're doing this.
It's Capcom. My bet would be
it's the
probably,
Pragmata stuff.
Yeah, and probably some Resident Evil. Just guessing. Guess what? Do you want to know what's funny?
Huh.
Do you want to know? The moment the recording started, Discord popped, and you showed up looking like you have a halo again. And I showed up dark. I'm not lying. I'm looking at it right now.
Dude.
Going, what the?
God damn it.
So I know what it is, though.
It's a filter, maybe?
No, it's Discord has a setting that's like capture advanced video for podcast or for whatever. That's what it is. It's advanced video. So I'll have to turn it off. We can both turn it off later. It's no big deal. What's up, everybody? This is Carrot with ACG, and I'm here with Johnny for the Best Gaming Podcast, number 522. 522 podcasts, 522 live streams, 522 times of sitting down, talking on Fridays about games. Because I don't believe I don't believe most of these were like the multiple weeks in a row. Like it's almost all Fridays for this. I was talking to one of the guys last night who's watching or listening to the podcast, and he's like, dude, I was listening to the podcast and suddenly I heard your voice and it sounded all weird. And his podcast setup in Spotify had dropped him to our very first podcast we had up on Spotify, which is number 12. And he's like, who's this Cadiz guy? Come on, guys. Oh, by the way, were you one of the ones who picked up on the fact that if you look up the podcast, it says that Josh is the host? And then I love that.
That was on ChatGPT. It's
everywhere.
Yeah.
It's like in multiple of the GPTs, man. They're all like, oh yeah, for sure, man. That Josh guy. I'm like, you wish. Not going to happen. What else has been going on? What'd you do this week? Did you do Death Stranding?
Yeah, quite a bit of Death Stranding. I got like about 10 hours in.
10 hours? Damn.
Yeah.
It's not bad. All right. What'd you think?
I'm sure we'll get into it. There are a lot of thoughts to unpack, but I think it's pretty much...
Let's do it right now.
Let's get into it.
Let's get into it.
Okay. I think it's pretty much a better game all around.
Right.
There isn't a single aspect that I thought was better in the prior so far, because even stuff like the pacing, and you talked about it in your review, like time to immersion was excellent. You know, you were kind of put into it straight away. And even when they're doling out the exposition, they have ways of like pressing the pause button and letting you play a bit and then pick up where they left off. They even do it a bit like tongue in cheek, kind of like breaking the fourth wall a little bit sometimes, which is also cool. But yeah, overall, I think like the gameplay is a lot more fun, and they have a way of always giving you a reward after a mission that feels really gratifying. So you're always unlocking new stuff. And what I found too, I think this is a trap a lot of people can fall into.
Sorry,
you opened something bright there. Yeah. Like a trap some people can fall into is doing all of the side quests as they come up and kind of getting lost on that. And what I would say is that while the side quests will unlock some lateral improvements in the sense, like you have more breadth, like you might have more weapons to use or things like that, advancing the main story will unlock new levels to your infrastructure, to stuff you can do. So it's really worthwhile for you to keep advancing the main story, and then, you know, go back, do some side quests when you feel like it, but it's not that kind of game where they want you to clear all the side quests as they're coming up. It really feels rewarding for you to advance the main story quite a lot, and then kind of, you know, go back and use some of the new things to, whether it's moving around more easily or just have better logistics, just works a lot better.
Yeah. I think the first thing I noticed, and the best thing about Death Stranding 2 is, you know, everybody, they're the laziest fucks in the universe. And I appreciate that, because there's a base that's like 12 feet away and this guy won't go to it. And it's one of those games where the longest walk is like 15 minutes in that game. And so it feels good. I'll tease the fiction because of it, because it's idiotic as hell. I mean, literally, there's multiple deliveries where the guy can see the delivery point. I can see the delivery point. It's like, you see that guy over there? Can you run this pizza to him?
It's that building. It's
like, dude, look, it's right there. But it helps. And yeah, you're right. Like many parts of it are just genuinely better. And it's not only the side quests, the main quests that you can do, how they all work out, but it's the fact that it's still pretentious in a Death Stranding way, but it's not a pretentious in I'm going to show you how good I am. Therefore, you're going to have to sit through 10 hours of absolute shit at the start of the game. The game is just like, you start in action pretty much, or at least in movement, which is really nice. You have a cutscene. It's not super long, but there is a cutscene there to get you going. And then boom, you're right outside and you're just doing stuff. And it shows it's a sophomore effort in this series. And a lot of times people don't have the confidence to look at it and say, you know what? We fucked up at the starting. And we do see the issues. And regardless if people love it or not, they fucked up. They know they fucked up, and they've switched it because they fucked up. That's fine. Like, I mean, it's not a perfect game. Yeah. And the idea that they're like, okay, this can be the same grab for old fans, and it can get new fans in who maybe heard about those first 10 hours and were like, screw that. Like I just don't have the time for it. And the game starts out pretty quickly, get you going, and he just goes out there. I will say the one thing about him, though, is they've got this guy. If he's so easily jobbed out like a cheap $3 fiver, and yeah, I said that, $3 fiver. If he's so easily jobbed out, you would have think somebody else would have showed up and been like, hey, dude, I got some pencil erasers that need to be delivered and you need to go. Because he gives up some stuff, I'm not going to spoil it, to go do this job so easily. Yeah. So easily that you're just like, damn. So I guess in a way that's the trade-off, is that to not sit there and hold back and be mired in his desire to not move forward. They're like, all right, whatever. We'll just have him be okay with the requests that he gets, and off he goes. And hey,
in fact, I tried to reject the job, and well, I won't say what happens. They have like a funny thing, that reacts to that. But yeah, no, I agree with you. I mean, in some ways, it's also his identity at this point, right?
Yes.
So I think he says, hey, it's the only thing I'm good at. And it's part of his own struggle with himself that he sees that as the only thing he can do, right? So he kind of sees himself as a failure in everything else. So I guess in that sense, it kind of makes sense that he would be okay with it.
Let me ask you, though, do you really believe that? Because I feel that he showed in those years that passed between the two, or the year that's passed between the two, that his best job has been technically a father. And the idea of passing that up because he wants to deliver pizzas, or he was once good at delivering pizzas, may draw you into an odd contrarian discussion there of what is he best at.
Yeah, no,
does that make sense?
You're right there. I think he fell for the, hey, just one quick job thing. Mm-hmm. Like how in the movies they say, hey guys, one final hit.
One final thing, man. We hit and we're out. It's a Triple Frontier is so good at that. They get all these guys from the military, guys who've got kids, they're failing lives, but they're still trugging along, who've refused multiple jobs. And the one guy shows up and he's just a little bit better than everybody else at saying one more job. And they're like, all right, we'll go. And that didn't end incredibly well. But what else about Death Stranding got you? Any positive, any negatives? Anything that you're still like, man, I'm not a fan of this, or I wish they would.
Well, I still think the combat is pretty clunky.
Yeah.
Is it better? Yes. Like some of the weapons are pretty cool.
Yeah.
But we still don't have a dash to work with, which is pretty obnoxious.
Right.
Right, like your only tool, even when you're fighting bosses and stuff, like the boss is telegraphing this big attack that's gonna, the wrath of the heavens is gonna fall upon you. Mm-hmm. Should you not move out of the way? And the only tool you have to move out is to sprint, which you do very slowly, by the way, because you're moving in tar very often, right? Yeah. So, like some of that stuff to me is kind of mind-boggling that they wouldn't just give you a dash or something, especially with how strong and nimble the character is. He's able to like carry 200 kilograms of metals but he can't like hop over to dodge the. That's always bothered me, and it's still there. But yeah, it is better. I would say I think the game benefits from playing in the higher difficulty for me, because not like as a flex, but more so that it will make your decisions feel like they matter a bit more. Mm-hmm. Like if you went into a combat unprepared, that's gonna sting, and it's gonna, it's gonna force you to prepare for stuff and be more thoughtful about, oh, I should carry a ladder to this thing, or I should, have the right weapon for this type of mission I'm going into. Whereas the normal mode, I thought, was quite forgiving, to the point where you could walk up to, you can rock up to a confrontation with really any of the weapons, and you could kind of make it work.
Yeah. Yeah. The bosses. So testing on different difficulties, I can tell you straight up that's true. The bosses on normal or story are hilarious. They're paper mache. They're not even paper mache. They're, dude, and by the way, I also have no issue whatsoever if somebody wants to play it that way, because a lot of the gameplay in this game is not the bosses. In fact, I would say, I think I will go as far as to say, well, yes, it is a more enjoyable game when it's more difficult. I've always felt that brings investment regardless of the game. It is also not the strength of the game. The combat is, it's there. You can engage with it much more easily. There's more of it. However, it's not what he's known for. It's Sam Porter Bridges. If it was like Sam Shooter Bridges.
Personally, I wouldn't play it for the combat. If that was the
never
selling point, wouldn't be.
If it was, if that was framed as a game about combat, no way the game would be in deep shit. Because the combat is absolutely not strong enough to be even. It's a tier, but it's certainly a side tier, not a base core tenet of the game. It's a side tier of the game, which is fine. Nothing wrong with that. But no way. No way would I be like, oh man, yeah, you definitely want to play it because of this.
Yeah. Talking about like a couple things. Because overall, I really liked the game, by the way. And you said you also liked it, which I was, it was cool to see. Like as a quick side note too, big respect for you to like go into it with an open mind, because I know you felt pretty strongly about the first game. Right? Yeah. But it's cool to see, because a lot of reviewers go into it already with their mind made up, whether they want to love it or hate it, right?
Right.
So it's kind of cool to see that you can in fact change your mind, or like you're open to check out the next game and stuff.
Yeah.
That's always nice to see.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. And so with that frame, like really like the game overall, like in terms of quibbles that I think hold it back. The likes, I'm not a fan of like spamming likes on stuff.
Yeah.
And and also there's more. I don't know if they've tuned up the amount of stuff you see based on the first one, but I'm seeing just a barrage of like signs from people that they leave, like structures. Dude, literally in the first area, I rock up and there's a level 3 bridge generator, like fucking covered, like the umbrella building, like I have access to everything.
Right.
Level 3 instantly.
Yeah. I
don't have to build a single thing. And honestly, that kind of removes a little bit from it, because as someone who does like to build their own infrastructure a little bit, sure, would it have slowed me down? Yes. And maybe that's why they made the decision. But it streamlines things so much at times that there's really no reason to build, because it's all there for you. You can if you want to, but it's turned it into like a more of an optional thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Real quick, Dedicated Beard, $5 super chat. I can never catch live because I'm at work during this time, but always enjoying the content. Wanted to make sure to share my appreciation. Thank you very much. As you know, no sponsors, so any kind of stuff like this is always super helpful. So I would agree with all that. There was a time where it was down, and I'm a big fan of wanting to play the game as it generally is. So did the old LAN cable disconnect and played it for a great deal of time with it disconnected, and then sometime with it connected. And I can honestly say it was a disaster when it was connected. It looked like somebody just a shit burger of items that were, splayed out, and it actually affected the look of the game. So I went into the options. You can say share some. You can't turn it technically off unless you unplug, but you can be like share some, share all. I went share some. Worked out pretty well. It does look foolish at times, and it can certainly break the curve that you need for requirements. So I feel like I got a lucky break in being a reviewer. A lot of times you'll be a reviewer and it'll be worse, because whether it be patches or whether it be integration with other systems or whether it be having other people on your team, that kind of stuff, that was not there. And so I got to sort of experience it just as the game holistically. And I can say, yes, it was harder, but it's just not a hard game. That's one nice. It's just
right.
Not. So it's not like I can say it was Dark Souls and then suddenly it was a Telltale game. It's not like that.
Yeah.
It was just, it was definitely noticeable when it came down to it.
Most times, like, the difficulty might come from the traversal, but it's not the kind of difficulty that will lead you to failure state so much.
Right. It just
maybe
leads
that's
you to
why
exploring more.
Yeah. Or like, hey, I have to take a detour, or whoa, I ran out of battery on my vehicle. Now I have to lug all this stuff myself, and it's gonna slow things down. But you'll get there, right?
Yeah.
Or like, oh, we have to go through BTs, so we gotta sneak past. But all the emergent stuff really augments the journey, but I feel like it never really puts you in a full failure state. I think you can almost always recover.
Yeah, it's like it never puts you in a bad place. It just puts you in a place that maybe requires you to think a little bit differently on something.
It will slap you around a little bit, but it's like, like the immortal words of, what's his name? The butler in Batman.
Alfred? Yeah.
Yeah. Why do we fall? So we can learn to pick ourselves up again.
Yeah. Well, then I picked myself up a lot. So I definitely gotta move this over.
Yeah.
I definitely
and my stuff up too as it dropped.
Yeah, I certainly had no problem with the falling part. But it is what it is. It feels like its own game. I think that they did a great job with the sort of the identity of what they wanted to do, how they wanted to deliver it. It was delivered well. The story was, I think the story is noticeably less batshit insane. In fact, I feel like it is very close to being, I guess I would just say just a story, that you get, which I'm sort of happy with, because it's the sequel. It's like, some of this stuff, the mystery isn't there as much, because even if some of the mystery is left over from the original, they still build on it. They tell you the little story of what happened prior. They're like, last time on fucking Death Stranding. It's not like that. It's close to it.
Yeah.
So you're just able to get through it, and it doesn't, there's nothing inherently punishing about it. If you didn't know the mystery, and if you did know the story, you get the answers that you're hoping for. And overall, I think it works in that way. It's like, okay, that's the way it should be. It seems to work. No issues there with the story. No issues with the delivery. What did you think about the cutscenes, story, characters, voice acting?
So, I mean, so far it's been excellent. I do think it's easier to follow too, and the pacing is much more balanced. So you're not getting just a crap ton of exposition, having to pause your life to, get an hour film, which is kind of what it felt at times in the original. So this one, the pacing has been great so far. And it's got some of the quirkiness, like, you got the baby hands around her neck.
Yeah.
That literally useless, by the way. They only serve to, like, wipe her tears,
Just an odd
funny,
thing that's
thing.
There, and you're like, okay, well, all right, that's a thing.
Yeah, okay, that's...
it's cool. I mean, it's still on the nose with, like, character names and stuff, like the Tar Man, like, he's the guy that deals with the tar, so he's the Tar Man. A lot of that stuff is still there, but easier to follow so far. I'm about 10 hours in, so I haven't seen the majority of it, but so far it's been quite pleasant to to break up the gameplay.
Without talking about surprises, has there been any one particular thing that you have come that you were like, oh wow, I've enjoyed this?
Not necessarily, because I knew that Troy Baker's character was coming back because we knew he was cast in the game, right?
Right.
I like the way in which he came back. I would say I thought that looked cool.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I thought so too.
Yeah, so there hasn't been a ton that I've been like blown away by so far, but I'm still pretty early. I like the characters. I like Tarman. I like the doll guy that you're carrying around.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird. And at first I thought, oh no, it's going to break my solitude thing where I'm walking by myself and experiencing everything. And now I have this guy with me. But actually it works fine because he stays quiet quite a lot. And it's only sometimes where it comes into play.
He just stares at you knowingly from above your bed. Like,
yeah.
That was weird that he's just like above your bed staring at you every time you go to sleep. That game's got such a hard on for sleep too and rest. It's like such a big deal as you're reading books and it always shows you laying down. I always forget
your shower and everything.
I was just going to say, I always forget though. I always forget the shower. Like I'll be like, oh, I forgot. And I'll come back and it looks, destroyed. Then a cutscene will happen. Then I'll be like, oh, I got to go in there and shower. Then I'll read a book. I would say the only thing that really I did notice, and I'm hoping as we move forward, as we, let's say, move forward to other titles from him or whatever, I would really, okay, listen, because this will sound bad, but the writing is definitely 13-year-old D&D DM. And what I mean by that is the name of everything is what it is, right? It's like, if it's Stickman, dude's going to be about sticks.
Dollman.
And while that is a refreshing take for letting the player sort of filter in the rest, it's also insanely lazy. And there isn't any subterfuge or any real, there's nothing really there that is catchy when it comes to that kind of stuff. And that's, by the way, that's like not me even saying that. That's something you're sort of told about even as a young person when you're learning to write or something. It's, if you have too many characters with the name of what they are, it becomes very, you could almost say gangrel. It becomes just very, very basic in that way.
And if it was one, that'd be fine. But it's
every
almost
single
all
character.
of them. Heartman, like Die Hardman, every one of them.
Every single. I mean, his name is that.
Yeah.
It's every single thing about it. So, I want to see what else he does. I think OD looks interesting. Hopefully we get to see that and sort of identify with a different series that isn't Metal Gear and that isn't Death Stranding. But I think as a sophomore effort, it was a big improvement, and I'm happy, I'm happy to see it. I really do like the idea that he looked at it and was like, because you'll get fans who are like, no, this is perfect, blah blah blah, it's the best game ever, which I understand. Because I understand those kind of fans is what I should say. It was nice to see somebody go forward and be like, we need to improve some stuff. But we were talking about liking the old game, not liking the new game. Here we go. This is Schism Touch. He says, I used to follow you and listen, but you have dropped off tremendously, Carrick. You used to be one of the few I could support, and I would see call Kojima for the shitty pulls. Now you like Death Stranding 2. You are a POS.
Damn.
Damn.
So as I was praising you for being able to change your mind,
dude, I sort of dig somebody who's that stupid that they just sit and they're like, oh, there is no ability to say that a second of something can be better than the first. When this is probably the jackass who has a conversation about Star Wars and says that Empire Strikes Back is better than Star Wars. And you're like, dude, seriously, do you realize how often that fucking happens? People adjust stuff. And yes, I'm happily a POS. That is just short for position, and I'm one position in front of you for the rest of your life. So you continue to fail. Wiener Smiles says, I don't play a lot of choice-based games, but I did play Witcher 3. Now, I want to make sure we didn't read this one already. So you tell me if we did.
I don't believe so. Go on.
I made a choice at the beginning of a PlayStation that I still regret. No regrets. How do you keep the same state of mind through an entire game that takes more than one play session to complete? So basically he's saying he made a decision in Witcher 3 that's continued to haunt him. And he wants to know how to keep the same state of mind. See, what's funny is I don't think that in any way, shape, or form would affect it, because life isn't about always creating those. That seems gamified to me. Like, oh, how do I get back on course? I'm like, if that was the choice you made and you regret it, doesn't that indicate a little bit of positivity towards the game? Like, the game made me regret this decision. I think that's pretty cool, personally.
Yeah, anything that makes you feel strongly about a decision you made, I think it's pretty good. Like, good or bad. Well, okay, there can be some examples of a bad execution where it makes you hate the game, or like it makes something feel cheap, you know. But in general, yeah, if you even regretting a decision can be really powerful, and can also define your playthrough a little bit, because then decisions after follow a different suit based on that too. So I don't view it as a bad thing at all. In fact, I've made several big decisions that I regretted in Baldur's Gate 3 as an example. And that was the story that emerged for me. You know, we had those shitty mistakes we made, and we had to live with those.
Yeah, I agree. And I feel like if you make that decision and it sits on your shoulders, that's the best kind of decision you can make in a game. Or if it lifts you up and you're lifted up on that choice you made, what you feel is a good choice, that is also the best part of that game. That, to me, it doesn't really bother me too much. I do get where he's coming from, but I don't worry too much about towing a line. I just sort of do what I want to do. Solace by $10 super chat, only for the best of POSs. Thank you very much. That's funny. Wizard of Smoke, $2 super chat. Happy Friday, gang. What's up, Wizard? Hope you're doing a good job. Thanks for all the talks about Fallout 76 in our chat. It's always fun. Let's see. Christopher Jetzer says, $5 super chat. What are your thoughts on some of the DS2 questionable reviews that seem only for clicks or drama? Interesting. I haven't seen a single one. I admittedly don't care about reviews after I'm done, but I have not seen a single review that seemed to be like, it must be the title, because you really can't do it. You could do a review for drama, but somebody would have to click it and watch the review. And at that point, it's not like a clickbait. It's especially if you don't clickbait the title, but let's say you have clickbait in, or you have like outrage inside of the video, then that's just a review, man. Like, that's just the person's thoughts on it. So yeah, I honestly can say for this one, I haven't seen a single thing that seems, I think we'll get those later, right? I think we'll probably get those in the next couple days. Somebody will see something in the game they don't like, and they'll be like, worst game ever, or
brutally honest review.
Oh, Jesus, yeah. Man, those deflate me, as you could tell even by my body language when you said it, man. Yeah. But no, it's a good point. I mean, in all honesty, it really depends. Weirdly enough, on this particular subject, I've seen somewhat the opposite. Like, if somebody says something about a review and the review isn't outrageous, there's been a lot of people that I've noticed don't get codes. So what they do is they wait for the reviews, and then they do a video about a review. They'll find a review and they'll be like, this is unacceptable in this review, blah, blah, blah. And you'll be like, okay, what's unacceptable? And they'll be like, they said this. You know, I saw that somebody was just outraged. This I did see. I couldn't tell what it was. It was on my YouTube It was on my YouTube like drop down for Death Stranding.
Yeah.
Man, I can't remember what it was. It was somebody was like, this is the worst review ever. If I do see those, I'm like, is that for me? You know, I'm always waiting for that person to be like, oh my God, Carrick. So, but it wasn't for me. They were like, I don't even think the video's content was good enough for me to remember what it was about, but it was like they were mad at somebody for saying something about some content in the game. And as somebody who played that entire game, I can tell you, if there's weird, you know me, if there's weird content in a game, or if the game makes you walk too far, in no way, I don't owe anything to anybody at all. I buy the fucking games. I bought this game, even though I got a code. I'll bitch about it. I didn't really see anything. In that game that was an issue. Darn, I wish I could remember. I'll have to look when we're talking and try to figure it out. Alters is a great game to make bad decisions and continue to play the game. Yes.
Oh, yeah.
That is true. That is true.
Yeah.
That is Stressful game though. I will say Alters might be one of the few. We'll get to Alters.
It's not a
bit.
chill game.
It's not a chill game.
I thought it was, but no.
And I was pretty okay with it, but man, boy, did I sort of misread the way some of my friends were going to play that, because I saw you streaming, I saw some other people stream it. You were fine. You were just frustrated on like some of the little things you needed to try to figure out, which is fine. So was I. But I've seen people playing it who are generally at a really high level of like, I don't know what the fuck to do, kind of thing. And I was like, damn.
Yeah.
But back to Death Stranding. I like the building. Combat, not so great. Tar, not so fun. Combat, pretty okay when you have to go into it. Stealth, pretty okay. I had a tendency to have a bunch of boxes on my back like a fucking giraffe neck, so I couldn't hide worth a shit. Because they can see it right through the bushes. So if you try to hide and you have like 75 boxes on your back.
Makes sense. I mean, I'm happy they did that.
I have no issue with it.
Sometimes you have to drop your pack, right? To go into
a section.
Brother. And stuff. No?
No, use it to kill him. When you sprint, if you have enough boxes on your back, he lowers it down like a unicorn horn. And I killed a fucking boatload
It's a ram,
of enemies.
A charging ram.
Yeah, it was awesome. Once you start really leaning forward, you can catch people, especially if you're running slightly uphill or if you start it. Once you sort of have this thing where as you're running, it goes up and down. But if you get it just right, you can hit people in the face with it and knock them down. I had a great time doing that. Yeah, that was awesome. But
that's a very Carrick thing to do.
Hey, I was just like... And dude, people saw in the video, they're like, man, you fell a lot. I'm like, dude, that's 1/1,000,000th of the falls I had in that game. I mean, it'd be like, you need to hold on to, but fuck that, man. If he's going to fall, he's going to fall. I'm going full speed down this fucking ravine and, whatever may come. Occasionally I put my hand up and, how you can brace. But like, man, I ain't got time for this shit. I need to get down there really fast if shit breaks. I did have some stuff break too, by the way. I did have some quest items.
Breakables.
Some side quest items.
Yeah, whoops.
You're like, damn it. Graphics were good. I did have a couple little frame oddities in it, but overall I thought it looked really good, except for the interiors. I mean, that's just the way it is, but...
They're pretty lean.
They're lean as hell. They're really clinical, really basic, and...
Yeah.
There were a couple places where I was hoping that wouldn't be, because where I was going wasn't a sci-fi lab or something. And so I was hoping for a little bit more, but, didn't lose any sleep.
Yeah, I mean, the stations are pretty templated, right? Like, that's, I don't know how else to describe it, but it was like No Man's Sky early on when they had like 2 station types. And you would go in and it's like either station A or station B.
Yeah.
Type thing.
Yeah, it definitely was templated out. Yeah, overall, I would just say control was good. But
talking about graphics, real quick, did you experiment with performance versus like?
Yeah, I thought performance all the way.
Really?
Yeah. There's such a small difference, and there's a resolution difference. But I have a nice TV. Turn some processing on.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it. There was such a difference such a lack of difference between the look of the two that I was just like, well, it feels better at 60. I'm somebody who in no way, shape, or form will I lose sleep at 30. It's never going to affect me. I'll still play old games at 30 tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Not going to magically suddenly cry about it. I might cry at half the FPS, but I will not have an issue with that. And with this performance, just, it felt a little better. And they did a really good job with whatever changes they made. There's some pop in, but it occurred on both versions. I think that was the other thing. So at that point I was like, well, if it's occurring everywhere, and I notice pop in more than I'll notice some other stuff. So I was like, oh, it is what it is. His ideas and vistas, Johnny, are what nail it. It's not the fidelity. For example, I don't know about you. I like the character's look in the game. Huge step up for Norman Reedus graphically. The
skin, models were better.
Yeah, his skin. He's always been a guy that looked one step away from seeing on a street corner somewhere. I love the guy, but he is a rough looking dude. He embraces that. I think that's great. That all looked good, but I will say that I wasn't necessarily impressed with the characters as much as I was just the world, walking around, seeing a void out, seeing the destruction.
Like almost the composition and stuff, with lighting coming in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Pretty awesome. And then like the mega scans they use for the rock formations and everything had some exceptional detail, even at long distances and stuff. Like you could see in the starting area already.
Yeah, it was great.
I was just staring at the rocks more
it
than ever.
The Decima engine great. Rocks because Decima's just 2 games, and that's the Horizon games and this game. And I don't know how that business came about, but I love the idea of it. I love the idea that both companies have shown that at least with Vistas, they're able to really that engine's good at that. It's not so good at other things though. So, and this could be the developer, but I'm going to say what I experienced in that game. There's a great deal of clipping and a great deal of animation snafus in that game, and a great deal of real oddities, like shooting off the top of the ladder like a SAM missile, and then just popping off and bouncing off the rocks and doing weird stuff. And you can climb in some places. It doesn't look like you can climb, and you can't climb in other places, and the climb button won't even show up. And you're just like, dude, this is really jank. But luckily, it's only jank, or it's mostly jank in the positions that you would say put a ladder to go up, and it's only halfway as high as you need. It's not necessarily just by exploring the game world. It's when you start adding these things. And that's the positive and negative of the game. When you start adding these climbability, modifiers and stuff, that's really when the game helps and can do cool stuff. And also when it feels like it is an add-on. It doesn't feel natural. You almost have this, I would say, perfect world that's solidified in place, and I'm fine with that. But when you start adding ladders or other things to it, that's when you start going like, boy, you can really tell that there's almost no interaction. It's almost like it's laid on top of something. And
for example, the climb button is also kind of weird how that works. Like once you start going up something very steep, he will sometimes switch between like using his hands to help himself out and then be like running up, but he's almost chest to the ground.
Right.
So it's like he's running, but he's like flat onto it. And at times it's almost like the character doesn't know if he's supposed to climb or he's supposed to run, because you see animations going like
between the two,
kind of half in between. It's a bit janky there, to the point where I started using ladders a lot of the time for those where you have a big incline. I'll just put a ladder down, and I knew that I could walk up that pretty easily. So some jank there. And as much as when he's walking normally or running normally in normal terrain, the collision with the feet looks pretty convincing, I thought.
Yeah.
And the gait and changes of gait, and like, oh, now he's going like kind of side to side to balance out, or to that felt really, really good. There were other times where I could kind of see, the feet going through stuff or not quite connecting. And I think it's those changes of just gradient with the terrain, like you were saying, where like something is a bit out of the usual parameters and it can't quite interact with it in a convincing way. But like for the most part, I thought it worked pretty well, because I'm someone who I tend to fixate on these things like, are the feet, connecting on the ground, or are they like phasing through it?
For me, I would say the worst part of the game, if there's a worst part, is absolutely, without any shadow of a doubt, is the inventory. I think that it's bad. I think that it's not as informative as it should be, or as quick as it should be. There's a lot of double nested kind of stuff that you get into that is like, man, this is shit. Like, this is not good. But I just learned to not care. There were times where I was like, do I want to go in and switch this? I don't want to deal with the inventory. And in a way, you could say that reflects the fiction of repacking your backpack. If anybody has ever been camping and you have something heavy in your backpack that's in the wrong place, there's a joke around backpackers. It's like, pack once, because if you have to repack and unpack because something is in the wrong place in your backpack, it fucking sucks. It sucks because a lot of it is about efficiency and stuff. And so if you have to pull it, and so overall, That was the one thing I noticed. I did not like that. I didn't like the moving items to the tram, which is just, I don't know if you've got to that part, but moving items to the tram is like, what the, it doesn't make, it's at first you're like, did I move it to the tram? It says it's moved to the tram, but then, and there's these oddities of almost like, here's something that you can do, but it might take you 3 or 4 attempts to do it before you realize that you just went to the base and your shit.
Go into the right menu or like, yeah.
Yeah, but dude, there were times where I went to somewhere else and I didn't have the stuff with me. And I was like, wait, what?
Oh.
Why didn't I have the stuff with me? Because he has quality of life in some places and not others. Would have been nice if there's almost like I almost think of it like a spreadsheet where it's like, this takes 2 steps, so we help him with a third. This takes 2, we help him with a third. This takes 3, we don't help him at all. And you're like, what? Like, it would have been a little bit better if there were just a couple things, but obviously that's nitpicking. It is the inventory, so it's not necessarily super nitpicking, but that would be the one thing I noticed. Yeah.
I mean, the menus are a bit cumbersome too, because like you always have to go to the main menu first to then access any of the other menus, like your inventory or the map and stuff like that. So you don't really have like a quick access to just, go quickly into it. You have to go to the main menu and then like cycle through stuff.
For a while, I thought I was scheduling out my route and realized I was just putting waypoints down. Took me a couple hours because one's hold and one's not, but they both succeed. So I'm like, boom, boom, good to go. And then one time, I don't know when I did it, I held it down and it's like, I was like, uh-oh, what's happening right now? And then it's like draw over. So I went back. And then when I hear draw, I really do think hold the button down. That's just me. But when it said draw, I held it down. That didn't do anything. I was like, okay, wait, maybe that's not what they mean. And then ended up going to the other place, highlighting that, holding the button. And then it's like, here's your risk versus reward, or here's sort of your risk level for this trip, which, by the way, I love. I also didn't feel in any way, shape, or form I had issues in those first couple hours that I couldn't do it. It didn't affect me at all. It was just, that's sort of the way it was. Reading some of the voice chats here real quick before we move on. I saw the GameSpot was complaining about it as womanizing. I haven't seen it in that aspect, so I was wondering if there's actually something valid to critique. Are we talking about alters? Or we're talking about Death Stranding? Was complaining about the game being womanizing. I mean, I can only speak for myself. I probably have a higher tendency, or a higher, what do you call it? Like a higher
threshold
level of,
or something.
Yeah, probably.
Tolerance?
But I mean, I'll notice weird shit. You know me. I'll be like, hey, get that anime pillow out of your crotch. Actually, there's a thing where you have all the girls taking pictures inside of the ship, and it did feel a little bit like, what exactly is going on? But I'm more of the type of person who just, when that kind of stuff happens, I'm like, okay, well, that's a thing that they put in the game. It's not Bayonetta where, you have crotch cam, or Nier Automata where your robot is in panties, and which, by the way, I love Nier Automata. It's one of my favorite games. I like her design, actually. But I do get where somebody else would. The thing is what happens is people want to put their foot down and say, no, you can't have an issue with that. And it's like, well, this dude's coming in, or this lady's coming into the world and gaming in a different thought process than I am. And I've had it before. And I'll tell you guys again, people fucking all the time. That's great. But that also means new people are coming into gaming every day. And when you get a person who comes into gaming, they see triangular tit Laura Croft pop up, they're going to be like, why does she look like that? Or why does this character look like that? That's a valid thought process. And if they don't like it, they don't like it, as long as they explain it. I didn't find that part womanizing, but I guess maybe somebody else did. I wouldn't be too bothered.
I don't think so.
I wouldn't be bothered by it if somebody brought it up either. I mean, that is the one thing, is like, discussing it is different than reviewing it that way. So if that had bothered me, I could have brought it up and then been like, just brought it up. That's it. I think a lot of people are like, it doesn't mean just because something's there that you don't like, that if I ask you for a rating, you're going to be like, because of nested menus, this is now an 8. I don't think that's really realistic. I think a lot of times you can just be like, this is odd, this is odd, this is odd. I still like the game. We saw it a couple of weeks ago. I mean, people were, downright pissy about even the smallest, even the lightest, even the barest touch of a critique of Expedition 33. And I understand.
Yeah.
I understand. That's their girlfriend right now. They don't have sex. It's fine. It's fine. But at some point, you have to be under the assumption that it's okay to say, this is my favorite movie, but here are the weird things I noticed. It's fine. That's life. Like, just, you know, get off of it. How long is Alter? Seems like one that would be good for 15 to 20. You're right on there, Spooner. It's about 15 to 20, depending on what you do, how you go about it. Who you want to live or not live, I guess, would be the easiest way to say it. How much time you take in the non-timed areas, because I believe there's about 7 of them. There's the base doesn't require time, right? When you're rebuilding your base, there's no time countdown there, right? Okay. So there are a good number of places that you can go about your day and work and not spend time that accrues towards your mission. So I could see a lot of people jumping in there and having a great time. And I saw you. I also saw Solar and a couple other people jump in there for a good deal of time and play for a while. And that, 2, 3, 4 hours of time. So you could easily get to your 20, pretty fast. I also did a poll. Which video game protagonist would you trust to babysit your kids? It was Link, Lara Croft, Geralt, and Master Chief. And Geralt won by 1 point. Now,
okay,
Geralt,
who's leaving Geralt?
Yeah, can I point this out? Yeah. Geralt's quite literally out there killing all the creatures in the game world. And he won. Link, you could say he does the same thing, but is like connected to nature, and he's got 22%. Master Chief, I mean, I get you. Master Chief would nuke the entire landscape if it meant killing a single flood. But that's a funny poll, man. Now it's even. People, there's votes changes. Sorry, what were you saying?
It's got to be Lara Croft. I mean, she's got a bit of a maternal instinct too. She had like stuff with her dad that like she would take care of your kid for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, let me say, if I had changed it to be a babysitter for your children, if you guys had voted anybody but Laura, I'd be mad, because that's a perfect kind of babysitter right there. You know what I'm saying? I'm just saying, if Lara Croft was your babysitter, dude.
True.
Stacy's mom.
Pretty much, yeah, among the best.
Yeah, among the best of babysitters. What is the best of babysitters, Lara Croft? I didn't really know who to put in there, because, like, I wanted some. I mean, a lot of the games that we play now, you kill all the animals. Like, that's just the way it is. So it's hard to be like, what do you want as a babysitter or as a animal sitter, when technically so many of our games have us going out there and killing every single animal of a certain type and bringing its skin back home.
And your talents are so far away from anything connected to, like, engaging with humans. Like, put Aloy in there, and she's trying to figure out how to switch what's it called? A nappy?
Yeah. I don't think I would want her raising my kids. I feel like that would be bad. Servant Berserker says, ugh. YouTube changed things again. Why our username is shown in full? I don't know, buddy. I don't know. But I mean, if your username is shown halfways, I feel like they're both about the same. Like, not too surprising. Shouldn't be too bothered by it, unless you used a username that the last part is really questionable. Oregon says, does it look silly holding 10 boxes, choking someone unconscious? Dude, I feel like when you're choking somebody unconscious, whose right is it in this world to say you look silly? If you're choking somebody unconscious and somebody's there to watch, I feel like that person probably wouldn't say whether you look silly or not. They'd just be like, dude, he's choking him unconscious. You either jump in or you don't say they look silly. Right?
True. Yeah, you got to respect that.
Doesn't that? Yeah, you got to respect it, or you got to go in there and you got to slam them down. Hero on business, or this one's here on business. We have both. $5 super chat, gents. Happy Friday, beaming good vibes. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Absolutely. Link is mute. He would whip the kid out of frustration. Oregon says, only because I want to see Lara Croft when I get home. Dom says Chief would annihilate any threat towards your kids. That is true.
Along with your kid, maybe accidentally. Like,
yeah. So Psychic Connection had asked me yesterday to talk a little bit really quickly about dual chamber headphones versus single chamber headphones and why I was discussing them so much in our voice chat. So I'm going to cover these really quick and we'll get back on to gaming. So lately there's a lot of discussion about video games and audio increasing and audio, especially when it comes to your delivery, whether it be a DAC, a tube amp DAC, whether it be digital transfer. It really just all depends on what you want to do. Earbuds, open headphones, closed headphones, semi-closed headphones. I personally believe, without a shadow of a doubt, one of the biggest improvements in audio these days is dual chamber headphones. So if you're I'll explain it in both ways. If you're an old fan of, speaker systems, or if you have a home theater, you might have what's considered either a ported or sealed sub. A sealed sub is a sub that's in a box. You have your speaker and everything within that box. There's no air getting out. It's a sealed box. It moves the speaker up and down. You're good to go. And then you have ported. And what a port does is, depending on how deep it goes into the box, is your cutoff for audio getting out. It's basically, it cuts that subsonic at a certain point. So the reason why I bring that up is because dual chamber headphones, which are the ones I have a couple others. They're not necessarily rare, but they're starting to get picked up more. Was that a motorbike at your house?
Whoa. Yeah, that was.
Dude, he agrees. Why do you guys hear me talk about them a little bit? Well, here's the thing. Normally in a pair of headphones, imagine you have a block of air and you have your speaker, a little block of air, and it goes into your ear. What happens is, inside of the chamber that collects the air are ridges, and those ridges are tuned so that when the air goes up and down, certain frequencies, including mid and treble and bass, get into the diaphragm, comes out, you hear it, and it's tuned. It's basically, there's little ridges in there, and those little ridges interrupt or augment whatever sound you're looking at. One of the nice things about that is it's fairly small, it's fairly thin, and you can get some nice headphones that aren't particularly bothersome when it comes to size or anything like that. However, it's called muddy sound. And what muddy sound is when you're trying to adjust audio and you have everything in the same audio chamber, you can only do so much adjusting before you're really just getting the same air hit and you're really just getting the same diaphragm movement. And so you'll get muddy, meaning if a mid vocal tone happens and bass happens, you'll get a flutter. You get like a sound.
Like an overlap or something.
Yeah. So the reason why I push the dual chambers, even though they're a cheaper headset, and the reason why they're so phenomenal is because as somebody who tests headsets $2,000 down, I can say they're probably some of the best, other than, maybe a membrane headset, though they have their own problems, is because what they do is they have a chamber just for bass. So they have a chamber where the bass actually has its own resonance and its own tuning. And then you have your mid and your highs, which are far less capable of really damaging the sound of one another in their own. And then they all end up hitting the rest of your headset setup and delivering sound to your ear. So what you can get is some great bass that is clean, tight, or punchy, or whatever you may want, without it impacting mid-range in particular, which is where that thub comes from, where that comes from when somebody talks. So when it comes down to what we're seeing in the future for headsets, you've got your open backs, your semi-open backs, your open and closed backs, because the new headphones I've seen have caps that go over, so you can have a closed back if you want, or you unclip it and it becomes an open back. And then you have your membrane, your diaphragm kind of stuff or membranes more, but you have ones that are just a single like line. They don't look like a normal woofer. Those are, Audi's, I think, is one of the companies that does those. I'm probably pronouncing that name wrong. I've been very unhappy with all of the headsets I've got from them. Insanely unhappy, especially over a long period of time, whether it be break, buzzing sounds, just really have not been happy with those. I still own them. I've got 2 of them. But I am very happy with the dual chamber. And as somebody who grew up porting speaker boxes and adjusting, there's only so much you can do to fake the mechanics of a good setup. And I think that dual chamber is a good setup because it's the science of audio. And until we figure out a way around that, it's very difficult. Razer has some very expensive headsets. If you guys are a fan of that, Razer's got a particular headset design that is its own ported / dual chamber design as well, other than the HyperX. And I've heard those sound great. They're done in a different way, but they basically, you could almost imagine they isolate down the center instead of an entire chamber. But, you know, you get what you get. I will say that we're seeing some crazy improvements on the low end of earphones. And I think or headsets. And the reason why I'm so happy for that is the physical part doesn't cost a bunch. So if you can make a headset that sounds great at a low end because you add a small chamber to it, to me, that's the juice. That's the magic, because then it just helps everybody, because then you have companies who build on that and they add all the other tech that they are doing everywhere else. And now they have that design to do. So yeah, so that's dual chamber, and there's not a lot of headsets that do it. There's a few coming up. I know there's another company that's got their own design coming up next year. Super excited to see more of it. It's not necessarily a new or old thing. It's just that some companies don't want to do it or do want to do it. But I will also say, I feel like there's a chance it's also connected to the battery life being so long in these, because I've noticed all the dual chambers last 80 hours for the HyperX. These are 300. And that is not a lot.
Wow.
I got 301 the first time. I got 308 the second time. I got 297 one time, because I track them, and you can even see the time on their software. I would say that, or maybe that's my software it might be my testing software, but I'm wondering if that's where the extra battery life comes from, is a dual chamber, because you're not losing sound. You're able to do a ton of other stuff, and also you don't need as much energy because you're not moving all of the sounds and trying to get them loud, then clipping them to get them out and sound good. So anyway, that's your answer. Thank you very much for the question. We're going to move back to games. Knucklehead asks, rank these of importance in the game for you guys: story, characters, gameplay. So in terms of importance, story, characters, gameplay. Here's the thing. Can we remove characters? Because what if you're playing Tetris?
Okay. Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? So in an NFL game, I might not care who the running back is. It might just be mine, but the gameplay. So what about story, gameplay, presentation?
Presentation.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good one.
What's the top out of all these, and what's the top? We'll say that. So story, presentation, gameplay.
I mean, I think gameplay is king.
Okay.
I don't remember a lot of games that I played solely for the story or for the presentation, no matter how good they are. It's always been a combination. So, for example, Ghost of Tsushima had amazing presentation, right?
Right.
But if I didn't like the gameplay and the moment-to-moment, sure, I would have played it probably, but, you know, it wouldn't keep me. And I know that because there have been some games with fantastic presentation, but I haven't been a fan because the game, like the moment to moment,
I hear you. Yeah,
wasn't rewarding. So I think that's your bones, right, for your game. Like the moment to moment needs to be satisfying.
So this is hard, dude, because I have played quite a few games where the graphics got me through some bad gameplay, and a good-looking character can be characterization. A bad-looking character can be characterization in a way. Does that make sense? Or an ugly character can tell a story all by themselves. Let me give you an example. If 3 dudes showed up, you're in a D&D game, and you send out a bulletin, I need help, and 3 dudes showed up. Depending on what they looked like, it would matter, you know, sort of how you reacted to them. They are a part of the characterization. They're part of the gameplay, or could be a part of the gameplay. With games, we have a tendency to make sure they're part of the gameplay so they fit. But I would say overall, yeah, gameplay's number one, because regardless of any of the other stuff I said, it's still gameplay that makes those things work. Gameplay makes the character work, even if the gameplay is pressing a button. See, I think that's the thing, is that's one of the reasons why even myself, when I review and I'm like, here's your general story, here's your gameplay, here's your graphics, blah, blah, blah. The reason why whenever I get people mad who are like, well, you said the graphics suck, well, I'm like, dude, it's the entire thing that matters. It's the entire thing. And rating it and saying what's important might change. It might change. There might be a game that's got not the greatest gameplay, but if that story's good or the character's good, at some point I can say the character and the story good, but aren't I also saying if it's delivering story with any kind of mechanical input, at some point you are playing the game, and therefore there is some gameplay there. I think it's actually not what's the best. It's how bad can something be before it impacts the game? Does that make sense? So flipping this on its head, it's not so much what matters the most. It's more, to me, the reverse of it. Like, how bad does one of those elements need to be before it becomes so noticeable that continuation is difficult? That does happen. If gameplay is really bad, continuation becomes impossible, I think.
Yeah.
Like,
I think to the point where if gameplay is bad, I can't think of a single game
that you've stuck with, even if the gameplay adjusts during your time play.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Has there been a game for you where the story was so good that you put up with gameplay you didn't like?
Alpha Protocol is a broke dick beast of unbelievable proportions, a buggy, disastrous catastrophe of programming that the likes of which has rarely been seen. It's that bad. However, it's playable, as in I beat it back when it first came out and everything. It's all goofy. There's weird shit that happens, but the story and the ability for the main character to have choices in the story. It even had RPG shooting, Johnny, meaning if you aimed and fired, if your stat wasn't high enough, your bullets would miss. And I got to tell you, it takes a lot to sell that to a gamer, right? When you think about it, it takes most gamers would say, let's just remove that then and go to turn-based or something, because I don't want to think I'm going to hit this guy in the face and the bullet goes, boo. It actually made the spread wider. You could still hit him occasionally, but it just sort of made it so your control was poor. But yeah, Alpha Protocol for sure was definitely bad enough, but I enjoyed the characters and the story enough that I stuck right through it and really enjoyed that story. But not often. I remembered that one right off the cuff. So that goes to tell you it's sort of rare.
Yeah, it's rare. Yeah, it's rare.
Mass Effect gameplay was ass. This is Vapor. Mass Effect gameplay was ass. Excellent world. Man, boy, I got to say, I don't know if I believe that, but each to their own.
I like the gameplay. I mean, sure, if you go into it today and you play, especially without the remaster version. Yeah, it's clunky as hell, the shooting and stuff. Yeah. But I think you also have to compare based on what was going on.
What was available at the time.
Back in the day.
Absolutely.
What was available.
Dude. Yeah, absolutely. That's why whenever anybody's like, oh, games were so great back in the day, it's like, not only no, they weren't. They had a ton of issues, but a lot of them you can play right now unpatched, and that goes to show you what the experience was back then. So, back in my day, Billy. Here on Business says, I got some HyperX Cloud 3, which are great. He says, I have many headphones at that price, and Hyper 3 are a great value. RPG story is more important than shooters. RPG story is more important than shooters, or does he mean in shooters? RPGs. In RPGs, story is more important than in shooters. See, I don't believe that. I'll say this. I believe that our history has shown that is what has worked in the past, but I do not believe that it's always the case. World at War is a great case of a story keeping me through the shooter more than the shooting, even though it was a Call of Duty. I was glued to the seat in World at War. It was one of the World at War. I don't know. I don't want to blow it up to some unbelievable proportion, but it felt like something that was more impactful than most Call of Duties could ever attempt to be. Dude, there's a part in World at War, Johnny, where this is hard to talk about because it haunted me a little bit. And I was old when I played it. Like, it wasn't like I was playing at 7, but you were going down the trenches and people with flamethrowers are just coming up top of you, and you realized that's exactly what happened in, the war there. And it was just all these things. They did a good job with the characterizations at those moments. And I was like, damn, son, like, that story has made me return to it. Not the gameplay, even though I enjoy that, but the story and the overarching, you know, I think it was Keith or Sutherland doing the voiceover. Call of Duty has always been so good, man, at picking up their movie stars. I mean, questionable ones sometimes. You know, we've got some with a history that maybe isn't the best, you know, 5-10 years down the road, but they got Jon Snow to do Infinite.
They got Jon Snow. Yeah.
So that was enjoyable. But yeah, I would agree. I would say the history shows that. However, it doesn't indicate a truth. It's sort of like the evidence is there for something, but the lack of evidence doesn't indicate that it's not, the otherwise is not true.
Yeah, it's not a limitation
as well. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not like a set limitation of it. It's just been the trend when you look at it.
And it could possibly be that it's a little more difficult to tell a great story when the main crux of the gameplay is running at full speed through enemies' grenade fire. It is a little harder to tell a story in those scenes, you know. When your guys like busting through and killing 100 guys, it's a hard to be like, whoa. Stand by. We have to tell. Could you please pause? We need to tell this story over here. It's got to be hard to deliver a good story in that way. Those are some great games, though, man. Banishers was janky, but awesome, Christopher says. First one on the 360 was basically playing a slideshow. I just played the... What? Oh, I thought he was talking about Mass Effect. I was like, I literally just booted up Mass Effect on the 360 like last weekend. I was like, definitely not a slideshow. I don't know what game he's talking about. Wizard of Smoke, 2,000 hours in a janky POS called Fallout 76. Yeah. Yeah. I definitely heard him have some hot takes in this last chat. I let him go. I was like, I'm just going to let Wizard give his go. And and he said, he's like, he was like, I want to say this is a hot take before I begin, or maybe he said it afterwards, but I was like, I'm just going to listen and let him go. And it dawned on me that he feels the same way I do about State of Decay 1, where they changed the gameplay later and I liked the original. And when the gameplay change occurs, it may be more, it may even be better, but you become accustomed to that original gameplay. And that is what you've grown up to like. And so when it changes, it doesn't resonate with you. It feels like an alien land, you know, slightly askew, like a mirror world. Where you're like, yeah, everybody seems like they're real, but I feel like they're all doppelgangers. Got a little bit of an alien vibe coming on because things have changed just slightly.
And it's a bad feeling too when they change a game you like.
Absolutely, it is. Yes. Even if you see more people in it, you have that moment where you're like, it'll never be the same. You know, I'm a part of this certain group that will, you know, it will never be the same. It'll never come back. Oregon says playing piano through PC software sounds amazing with headphones, but what are the best speakers to use as the music plays clearly without distortion? Speakers wise, I would say this. If you look at Creative, you look at almost any speaker system where they're wired together or where they're sold from a big company, if they're called speakers, usually what those are done is they're tuned to sound a particular way. So they're tuned to sound gamey. I use ProSonus monitors, which are flat, and then use the EQ to adjust them for you. If you really care about sound, maybe that's the way you want to go. I'm not saying it's the smartest way to go, but for me, ProSonus amplified monitors versus speakers, no matter how much money I spent on speakers. Remember, I've installed home theaters for almost 20 years. So it's like, I know what good speakers sound like. I still like these better because I'm able to pick up more of what's going on with using monitors like a mixer, an album mixer kind of person would use than home speakers. But you know what? At that point also, you're sort of getting into the nitty gritty. As long as you have different speaker sizes and different things, you know, for each, for your bass, mid bass, vocals. You know, the big thing, Johnny, that I've noticed that most people just don't think about, they have right and left and they never have a center channel. And I'm like, listen, I've seen people use their TV as a center channel. It works great too, because as long as you can get some sound in the center, because no matter how good those side speakers are, if they're too far, it's not in front of you. You know, no matter how good they attempt to be, it's not the same as hearing that dialogue from the person right here. And then if you can hear that dialogue, then this dialogue over here becomes more noticeable than it ever was prior. And when you hear that, the chatter of a newsroom or something coming on these side speakers is such a nice feel. I love that. You use mostly headphones though, because you're in London. You can't be cranking out the
Yeah.
sub bass tones with fucking neighbors
No.
nearby, right?
No, yeah, exactly. And I also like the isolation. It kind of feels like I can listen more carefully if it's not out in the ether. Just feels like there's more interference in the medium, whether it's my cat bitching about something or, I like the immersion.
Also, when you look at like the way all of this is handled, one nice thing about it is really, I kudos to audio. Audio's become more important, and we're finally getting good stuff. We're finally getting more setups. We're finally getting the ability for somebody to have a headset that isn't too grand or whatever, and they can sound great. Because I'm going to tell you, there'll be somebody, and I dealt with them. It's one of the reasons why I hate that fucking field. Because when reviewing headphones, you'll have somebody be like, well, technically these $3,000 and be like, fuck you, dude. Fuck you. Like, that's just leave. That kind of bullshit needs to, I hate the gatekeeping shit, because not everybody has $3,000, twice the cost of a TV, to put a pair of fucking headphones on their head. That's ridiculous. If you want to have that conversation, go talk to some pianists at some fucking concert somewhere, and just all of you can masturbate in a corner. But when it comes to like normal people using whatever they have the ability to use, you can build a base on a very cheap headset. Then you can identify, oh, I want to, this isn't the greatest. I will say the big thing for a lot of gamers is the power going into the headset is vital to getting a good sound. And when you're talking about a $40 headset, it's not that they won't replicate the sound, but they don't have the power to replicate sound and do those transitions at a higher speed. So usually what I do is I'm warn people, hey, get a cheap tube amp, or get something, as long as your headphones don't have an amp in them already, a cheap tube amp might increase your sound and your ability to hear those discrete sounds a great deal more than spending $500 for a pair of headphones. I mean, how many times do you hear that headphone shit? It's like, oh man. And you talk to audio guys at games, what do they say? First thing, we're not prepping for the $500 guy. Like, that's fucking ridiculous.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're not. They're prepping for the guy who probably still has a mono TV. Maybe not mono. Those we're past that now. But who has a stereo TV? And we can move from there.
In fact, you see that in the music industry too, where they are mastering
for phones,
dude, which is mind blowing.
Is that
right?
The craziest thing? I found that out a couple years ago.
Crazy.
And I was like, you are mastering for phones, and I'm like, dude, if you make it sound good on a phone. Most people listen to it on that, and then there's some adjustments you can make. And I was like, power to you, because I never would have thought that way. I would, like, never in a million years would have been like, we need to, what did he say? I think they said they had iPhones in particular, where they were just like, what does it sound like on this iPhone? And I'm like shit.
Mm-hmm.
But they're all, but we can make it sound like better shit, and therefore a person won't click off of it. Fair. Not what I thought, but fair. Let's see. Kaz Tembo 9661. ACG is an audio engineer. I appreciate your dedication toward addressing sound design in games. Thank you very much. Yeah, it's always fun. I love it. And good sound in a game is awesome. Flexing Mecha says Phantasy Star Online 2 was ruined by Phantasy Star New Genesis. Ruined, I says. Dodger, I have my game sound running through my DJ setup. Pioneer, I always get to sound amazing, but that's not a setup for everyone. Man, Pioneer, that's a name I haven't heard in centuries. Damn.
Yeah.
Wow.
Same.
That's like, might as well just have brought up Predator speakers, man. That's some ancient ass shit. I haven't heard, by the way, I'm not saying Pioneer isn't around. They're just not talked about as much. I haven't heard of Pioneer, and I don't even think I don't think I have a single Pioneer item in my house.
No, I don't either.
Damn.
Used to be much more prominent.
Nothing dissing on them either. It's just, like I said, they're just not, in that typical discussion that you normally get. Who's Lara Croft? Don't know. A video game character, I guess. Dodger says, I'm old.
They're
I'm
teasing
sorry.
us.
Don't be old.
For Lara Croft instead of Lara.
I just said Lara. Dude, there's always some jackass who's like, you switch it around all the time. That sounds disturbingly like masturbation. Moving on from there, let's discuss some cool news. First up, I thought this was awesome. Space Marine 2's Siege Mode is out. Endless waves of enemies, which they already felt endless. but somehow more endless waves of enemies in Space Marine. They've done a good job with the updates, man. They've got a ton of content on there as updates, and now, you've got endless mode. You going to return to that?
Yeah, I think so.
Me
Is
too.
it just like a horde mode
It is.
type thing?
Yeah, but it never stops. Never stops stopping. Never stops not stopping, actually. Yeah, it's just constant enemies. There's waves.
Wow.
I don't know what you do between waves, but there's waves, and then you go back out and more enemies keep on coming in. I love the idea, man. It's been doing great. Next up, so Mind's Eye actor reacted to the game's troubled launch. I thought this was awesome. So he didn't need to do this, and I'm not saying I think he's awesome, which I do, but I'm just saying I thought it was awesome. He basically came up and he explained his part of the making of it, and he said he didn't really agree. He felt like the game sort of got released. That's what they had. That's where they were at the time. And he was very nice to not throw anybody under the bus, which we've seen before, regardless of contracts. He was just like, listen, I don't agree with how it got released, but it did. I'm still pretty happy with what I did. But, the game got out there, and he said, I hear that they're fixing it, that kind of thing, but I don't like the idea of games coming out that buggy and that broken. I thought that was really cool. I was like, didn't go out of his way to spend an hour talking about it. Didn't go out of his way to, rail against society or the system. It was just like, got released early. It's happened before. It will happen again. So if you guys get a chance, there's a video you can see of that. It's Mind's Eye actor reacts to the game's troubled launch. Another game that doesn't have a troubled launch, it's only been around for like 67,000 years, and that's Dying Light number 1. Retouched update is out. Number 1. Can you believe that? 2015 is when it came out. They retouched textures to look way better in that old game. The the musician and composer came back to redo all the music when it comes to its mastering and when it comes to all the engineering to make them sound a lot better. Came in, cleaned up a bunch of sounds, redid some sounds, and changed some of the mechanics. And so now Dying Light 1 retouched edition, and it's free. Doesn't come out on the Switch. This adjustment is only on the consoles and on the PC. Here's what I found interesting, though. They did cover that if they changed too much, they would blow the memory budget of the consoles out, and they would crash the system. So they had to play and consistently test to see how much fidelity they could get in not only with their improvements to the engine that they're writing in, memory adjustments, but also the fidelity and adjusting things to use more memory and stuff like that. They were talking about this fine line that they had to make sure they didn't just absolutely destroy, the entire way it played or its performance. Dude, that's awesome to me. Dying Light, man. That's 1 year after I started the channel that came out, and it just got a free
game keeps on giving.
Yeah. And 2 is out, and it just got a big patch, and we have the Beast coming out. They do good work, dude. They do genuinely good work. And I got to tell you, I've dealt with them a couple times. They're also very easy to deal with, regardless of issues or no issues. They've top to bottom, it's one of the, I feel like it's one of the better, how do you say it? One of the better
continued support.
Yeah, no, that's what I mean I just mean as an entity, they're one of the better ones. They don't seem they don't seem to be, let me tell you it this way. They give 10 years of support for Dying Light 1, and they promise 10 years support for Dying Light 2, and they're continuing to do so. And yes, I have my issues with what the guy said. The Billy Goat fucking popped out there and was like, hey, we know that the people who matter didn't like Dying Light 2, which I'm like, dude, that's might be the stupidest thing to say. Like, that is a fucking horrendously dumb thing to say. But as a company, the support for their games might be one of a kind. Right?
Yeah. I can't remember another game that kept releasing updates for the first one after releasing a second.
Yeah, and continues to release those. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great, man.
Nuts.
Dude, it's awesome. It's awesome. Good for them. And I looked at some of those textures. I looked at some of the stuff, and I thought it was great. Another thing about game production, if you guys are interested, PC Gamer had I guess I would say, it wasn't necessarily them, it was who they talked to. But there was a good article you can read that was the CEO for IO Interactive talked about how they made Hitman 3, and the way of doing it where they have this sort of Lego block style for their level design, where they try to make sure that it doesn't feel like it's a copy, but that it makes it as easy as humanly possible for the developers to iterate quickly. And that's a new article on PC Gamer that I suggest people read. It's a good short insight into what it's like making games, but I did think it was well worth a short read to sort of see how they've identified even years ago that the quickest way to get their type of content out is to sort of have a block system. Like, here's what a bathroom looks like, and we can grab this bathroom from this level and put it in this level here quickly, but then we can iterate on that to make it not look like it's just a, quick copy. Did you do the Hitmans?
Yeah, for sure.
Would you consider them, like, where would you put those in gaming? Do you consider them pretty high on your list, pretty low on your list? Sort of forgetful?
No, they're pretty high on that type of game. I think that the layered aspect is the most impressive thing, because you can play levels. Even, it doesn't matter, like 1, 2, 3. I think all of them did it really well, where you could play a level 5 times or more, and you just keep getting more variety. You'd see more things that you missed and opportunities, stuff.
Yeah, I think they did a really good job. I'm excited to see what they have next for Hitman. A little less so with Bond, but I'm holding out. Yeah.
Less. Why do you think? Like, just the bland, James Bland situation?
James Bland. I think because James Bond is an IP, but it's not necessarily a surprisingly functional difference engine when it comes to games. It sort of feels like it is just Hitman, and that Hitman already has right, and that Hitman feels like its own thing, and then it's also made by them. So I it's not even a bad thing. It's just my area of interest, my desire level is just a little lower until I see it, and then I can sort of make an idea of it. But in the past, the Bond movies weren't just about Bond. They were about travel porn, the ability to go to other places via Bond and smash the fuck out of them with cars and shoot a bunch of people there. And and the Bond ladies. And the Bond ladies. And Bond ladies were even a big deal, as in they were almost they were almost the identity of the movie, depending on which movie you were talking about, especially the older ones, less so the newer ones, which I feel sort of lost their way. Even day one, I didn't mind them, but I was like, these feel like they're gonna feel generic really quick, because, well, that's what they were sort of trying to do. With Hitman, I just need to see it. Or sorry, not with Hitman, with James Bond, I just need to see it. But I feel like that genre's filled. It's not filled. It's just that I already have got my fill in that genre, and I don't know what they have to offer.
Yeah,
but that's just because I don't know. It doesn't mean I'm.
Yeah, we don't. I mean, we're also not developers, so we don't know what they can be cooking. But I think there's some room, like with the gadgets, to make it really special and make it unique. Because James Bond always had some cool gadgets, right? Every movie, it's like talking to Q and the new watch that also
right. But
whatever
here's
does
my
all
problem.
These things.
Those gadgets were almost notoriously built for a one-off situation that just magically happened to happen 6 hours later in the movie. So that's what bothers me a little bit. Okay, for example, Pierce Brosnan gets a ring. Oh, look, it's a vibration ring. You touch glass and it breaks. And you're like, okay, so there will be them on a roof at some point, and there will be a window that needs to be smashed. And by the way, that is exactly what happened. And it's happened all the way back. And you're talking to a Bond fan. I mean, old style, like Roger Moore, Bond fan, Sean Connery, all the way up. I'll watch them all and enjoy them. How does that replicate in a game? What I mean by that is we have tool use in Hitman. And I think the tool use in Hitman is legitimate. I think the tool use in Hitman is maybe you would call it almost clumsily unchanging, where Bond can definitely improve. if that improvement means I'm going to use this one device 30 times, then it becomes Hitman again, because that's what Hitman does. If it only uses it once, then you're going to feel like it's just there to be used that one time. I don't know. And by the way, I'm not bitching. I'm literally just saying that those are my questions. That like no negative feel towards it. It's just those, how are they going to do it? Yeah. And what are they going to do? I'm excited for it though. Other than that Bond, damn son.
Yeah, it just didn't stand out in any way as a character.
I don't want shaken or stirred. I just want water. That is, man, that was super generic to see them.
Yeah.
Kigoruse, $5 super chat says, like Carrick, I decided to give a chance to Death Stranding 2 after not liking the first one. I'm also a POS. That's fair. I don't exactly know, but you don't review, Kig. You know, we don't want to throw POS your way. You're just a person who has a limited amount of money who didn't like the first one. You ain't a POS. I can take it. I'm a POS. You're just a genuinely nice guy with a name I love to pronounce. Kigorose.
It sounds Japanese.
It is. I do. And one day we were just in there, just like, let's just rub as much Shogun on this as possible. Got a question here. Let's look at these. Let's go here. Ralphinator. Dude, that's a pretty legit username. Aliens come to Earth. They come and they ask you to give them a game. To save humanity, you got to give them one of the best games ever made, or to wipe out humanity, you give them the worst game ever made. What are you picking? You can also give them both and let them decide. Okay, so wait a minute. Aliens come to Earth. They ask you to give them a game. To save humanity, you got to give them the best game ever made. To wipe out humanity, you have to give them the worst game ever made. Which are you picking? But you can give them both and let them decide.
Yeah, what's going on with that?
Okay.
I mean, obviously, I don't want to be exterminated, so we have to look for the best game.
But I do like the idea of giving them a fucking horrendous game, because even if you get it exterminated, you still get to be like, I made that dude play that. Like, there's something hot about that, about being like, you're gonna show up and you're gonna challenge me. You know, you're gonna tell me that you're gonna wipe us out. Well, I'm gonna make you play I'm gonna make you play Advent Rising on the hardest difficulty with that shit ass control scheme. Well, first of all, we're probably picking good games, right? We don't want them to wipe out humanity, because that means dogs too.
Yeah.
That means all the good stuff. All right. So as I ignore humanity and I just say dogs, the good stuff, but you know what I meant? So yeah, you have to give them a game. I don't know what the end game on this is. Like, why would this stop them from killing human? I mean, this sounds,
so it's got to be such a good game.
It sounds like
convince them that we are
that you've ever played mentality, though, right? Why wouldn't you give them?
Yeah, but it's not only that. It's like an artistic representation of what the human species can produce. You know, like, what's the most crystallized form of human potential?
I give them No Man's Sky, and I'd tell them. I give them No Man's Sky, because at least maybe you keep them busy and they wouldn't realize that there's no real end game. And they fly to the center of the world and they're like, wait, it continues going. You're like, oh yeah, but there's an ending. Just lie to them. Be like, guys.
Yeah.
Go into No Man's Sky. There's an ending, but you have to get the right thing. But enjoy, follow the steps. I'll talk to you later. And
you give them Final Fantasy 14, but they have to play all the expansions. So that's like 500 hours in. You've bought yourself 500 hours.
You bought yourself 500 hours. You can steal their ship in that amount of time. What if I gave them Gollum, but they like the game? Hey, I mean, they don't kill people. Vapor says, give them the god-awful Steam game, Battle for the Sun. I remember you covered that game, Carrick. Battle for the Sun. Hey, you know what, guys? That developer, they were the first ones to say thank you for covering their game at all, and they tried.
Yeah. They had a crack.
There was no blueprints when they made that fucking game. There was none of this great engine shit. It was like a bunch of people tried to put together something. You know, they used some store assets, but they were like, hey, we want to build something. They tried it. It's like, hats off to you, because a lot of people don't do that.
Yep.
We'll move on from there. We'll just say we give them the best game. I mean, that's such a weird question. Super Bam says, good morning, gentlemen. In regard to difficulty, what do you normally stand on? And what significant gameplay factor would cause you to lower or raise the difficulty? I've recently been starting games on hard, find myself enjoying the challenge, especially Assassin's Creed Shadows. But I changed difficulty for South of Midnight because it felt unbalanced and higher difficulty with enemies just being tanky. I absolutely think starting on higher is better. With no hesitation on difficulty. Because you have to pay attention and then you can step it down. But if you go the other way around and you're accustomed to kicking the shit out of people and then you turn that difficulty up, you're going to be like, what? This feels uncomfortable. I don't know. That's me. What about you? Like, where do you stand? Do you adjust it?
I think it depends on the game too. Yeah, I do sometimes. I think it's along the lines of what you're saying. If the game in normal difficulty feels like I don't need to ever prepare for stuff or like have a tactic ever, that's when usually I'll bump it up. So Shadows is a good example. I thought it was a bit too forgiving in normal, and that you could just rock up to any situation and you'd be okay. And then I'm trying to think of an example where I lowered the difficulty. I think it might be more of like a time constraint. So, for example, I was replaying Lies of P, which is a game I've beaten twice already. And at some point I turned down, because now they have the easier modes. I did turn down the difficulty a bit because instead of taking like 5 attempts for some of the tough bosses, I wanted to just cruise through to the DLC.
Yep.
So if it's a time thing, or if you're the kind of person who doesn't like retrying things, which I can see, I think that can be a valid reason to like bump it down to an easier difficulty. Because at the end of the day, you're playing to have fun, right? And if you don't enjoy the iterations of like having to figure out something, then I can see that. But I think the main thing to look at is, does the game feel rewarding and well balanced? Because sometimes going to a higher difficulty means that enemies have a lot more HP.
Right.
It feels like you're not dealing damage, your weapons are not effective. And that also doesn't feel good to me. I like feeling powerful in games. I just like the stakes to be high. So usually I prefer some type of like glass cannon situation, where those are the higher difficulty modes that I like most, which is like I die very quickly, but I'm still effective. I'm still powerful.
Yeah, I mean, and overall, I wouldn't give any advice other than I would say to start at normal minimum, and then from there you can always go up or down, or start at harder
feel it out
if possible, and then go up or down, because at the very least you're going to have I mean, the human brain works it's pretty simple in how our brains work. And if you're paying more attention at a harder level, but you're still getting screwed, when you go back to the easier level or a lower level difficulty, it'll help you out. And same thing with speed. I mean, I still do very well on almost all the games I play, and one of the reasons why is I'll watch my footage back from the first day at 2 times or 3 times or 4 times the speed, so that the game doesn't feel fast anymore. Injustice 1 and 2 are great examples of this, or 2, I think. When you can have enemies come to your area to fight your guys, you're not playing it live. You're watching them do it, and you can turn it up to 8 times the speed. And when I figured that out, I just sat there and watched a ton of matches at 8 times the speed. And when I jumped into the game, I was like, holy shit, it moves like molasses. This is because your brain does get accustomed to whatever's going on. And I think with difficulty, the same thing can happen. So, by the way, anybody in chat, if you're listening to this on Spotify or iTunes, first of all, I would appreciate if you guys review the channel. It helps tremendously, or leave a comment on either one of those. The question was basically, where do you start when you play a game, and what difficulty? And I asked the people in our YouTube chat, and pretty much got normal or hard. Nobody says easy. Hard until you get to the horror scary part, then back to hard. Oh, that's funny. So that's funny. So hard difficulty, you get to a scary part, you go easy to get through it really quick because you don't like being scared maybe, but you sort of like it, but you don't want to like be stuck in it. And then you go back to hard. That's not a bad strategy. That strategy, I feel like that is sort of that's sort of cool. I've never thought about that. Spooner says, depends on how they scale it. I like how Starfield patched in difficulty sliders. I like the idea of patching in difficulty sliders, but I can tell you guys, man, sliders can fuck up a game so bad, dude. So bad. You can, if you have one slider out of order in some way and you think it makes sense and you're like, oh, you know, and you suddenly start getting a ton of loot or whatever, and now you've had it on hard, but because you've got a ton of loot, it's easy, and now you can't adjust it to harder because you're already on hard. I feel like sliders are good and bad. They're like...
I think they're really good for things like reaction time.
Yeah, parry window. Parry
windows, I think those are great.
I agree with that.
It, like some people just don't have good reaction times. That's perfectly fine. And some people don't want to have to work that hard to get good at it. Because the way it works is that we develop anticipation because we know what's coming our way, so we can react much better to it. And that takes some practice and some work. So the ability to dial it in is really good. Like Jedi Survivor did it pretty well.
Yeah, especially if you can dial in Survivor to uninstall right away. That game.
To be fair, it was pretty rough.
Sorry. I don't mean the game is trash. I said it wrong. That game's performance / technical delivery, blah, 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 is trash. That's what I meant.
Yeah.
Goddamn. And I'm waiting for that to nail it because I love the idea. I love the idea and I love the actor, but man, have they dropped the ball on that multiple times. Fallen Order was better, I thought. Just because of the tech stuff. Yeah, I would agree with you on the difficulty, man. I like the idea of counters. I like the idea of that gap. You know, it would even be cooler, Johnny, if you could tighten that gap to insane amounts, right? See, here's the problem. This is one of the reasons why I'm so bothered sometimes when I see people play who are streaming in our group. So a couple days ago, for some reason, we had a massive group of people in the chat. And that usually only happens on game days. Usually like 10 or 15 will be the most. We had a ton. Everybody was streaming games. One of them was playing either Liza P. Might have been Lords of the Fallen. Did I get it right?
Be.
Did I get it right? Lords of the Fallen?
You did.
Aha! Okay. And they were refusing to die. What I mean by that is they wouldn't go into it. When I go into a boss, when I'm reviewing, even when I played alone, I would go into a boss battle and I would just try to defend to see what the boss's actions were. You can try to roll them, but your chances aren't the greatest. It's not that it's impossible, but your chances aren't the greatest. And what I notice is there's an idea that time is money almost, even for non-paid gamers, non-reviewers, where they're like, oh, time's money. And I'm like, well, okay. Don't you believe then that just going in and understanding the moves and defending? Because I think it was Jay I was explaining to one day. He was doing something. I was like, Jay, just do me a favor, man. Just go into this battle. No plan whatsoever to attack. Do not attempt to attack at all. Just keep your hand off of that trigger. But try to live as long as humanly possible. And I guarantee you that your next attempt, you will be a good deal better, not just a small amount, because your brain is not wired to worry about the attack stuff. And it's seen everything coming in. Lo and behold, it was like 2 times. And he was like, holy shit.
That talking about the anticipation. You're developing that anticipation for attacks.
Instead of constantly like trying to feed back, you're just watching what's coming in and you're able to do it. So I like the idea of being able to adjust. I agree with you. I like the idea of being able to adjust the parry a little bit. Doom, the Dark Ages sliders work well. I started on 125. Yeah, I cranked that. And it was one of the most fun games. No one could watch it. I streamed it in the Discord, and people were like, what the fuck? And then I showed them Unreal at 400%. They were like, okay, this has to be a joke. And I'm like, no, this is, to me, that feels magical.
Right.
I don't know how to describe what it is about insane. It's almost color pattern awareness, where you know that most are enemies, so you don't have to worry about an NPC, and you're going in at full speed, and it's color, color, color. Take them out as quick as possible. I'm glad Doom had it, and I wish, for my life, I wish other games had it, but Doom failed spectacularly on that, too, with the audio. Where the audio sped up or slowed down, they'd be like, hey, Master Slave, come over here. You shoot this guy.
Oh,
when you
God.
had it up, when you had it cranked, you're like, what's happening? they screwed that up. I like the base difficulty being a nightmare, then unlocking a harder difficulty on NG. Nightmare. What game are you guys talking about? Must be talking.
Doom.
What's Doom? Oh, Doom. Yeah, duh. For some reason, I thought that was Dark Souls as well. Isn't Dark Souls got a nightmare mode? Some other games. I think nightmare must be used by more than one game. Maybe that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, not Souls, but some others.
Not Souls.
Yeah, sure.
A lot of Souls don't have a difficulty slider either. I mean, that's
Yeah,
been
it's
been
just,
the crux
you
of the discussion.
Our way or the highway.
I love that
Yeah.
too. I'm all for that. I love the ability to adjust it, but if somebody's like, because I also love it because Johnny, then you even have an easier discussion a week later when you're both talking about a game, because I know your experience had to have been the same as mine, which is great
Yep.
for a discussion. When I'm like, I know you played the game at the same speed, I know you had the same parry windows, and therefore whatever we talk about, there's that line.
True, and that's a big difference when you have something like Survivor where everybody's playing it slightly different.
Yeah.
You know, maybe I have the parry a bit tighter than you or
Yeah.
more forgiving than you, and then all of a sudden, like you say, we can't really compare our experience
Experiences.
at all
Yeah.
for a particular boss. But in some ways, that's the nice part of the purity of Souls, because like everybody had to beat whatever, like Artorias, fill in any boss you like that was the same thing for everybody.
Yeah.
Right, you had the same toolkit and the same limitations.
Yeah, I think it was might have been Solar. He had asked me about the color of the bullets in Doom, and I was like, change them to the same color as the normal bullets in Doom and get back to me. Run it on the highest, change color. And he's
You're
like,
a
wait,
madman, dude.
but they still, if you look closely, there's a tiny bit of graphical embellishment and detail on the ones that you could rebound, so you could change them the same color. And I know that not everybody wants to play that way, but that was great that they offered it. But if they didn't, I wouldn't have lost sleep. It's just, like either way, I'm not gonna. That's the developer's choice, and I'll be all for it. And if it doesn't work, I'll also be all for bitching about it.
I still like the presets, even if you have a slider. I still want to have the presets so that we can talk about it.
Yep.
Like, hey, I played it in X preset, and that kind of gives you a reference point.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, a lot easier for you to sort of dial it in. Let's see. We got a couple questions here. Let's go with Kig says, non-gaming, how do you guys handle tasks that you know you're not good at or you are bad at, but it has to be done? I do it first. I think I've already told you this. If I'm bad at something, I do it first because therefore the most energy will be available for the bad, hard thing. So I will get it out of the way, and I will do as much as I can of it early, because mentally I've not burned up any mental stuff on the stuff I enjoy, because you still burn up mental energy. You're still burning calories. I will usually try to do it first. Also, because I know I'm worse at some things, I will do it first. Therefore, if I can get feedback before it becomes a deadline situation, it's much easier to get feedback 7 days prior to a deadline than 1 hour prior, where you're like, oh, you fucked up the entire formula. Damn it. We're screwed.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I don't know if it's based on I don't know if the science around dopamine is settled. I've heard like different tales of how it works, but one version that I heard is that you wake up with a certain amount, and then that's sort of getting consumed, and what you choose to do earlier in the day will benefit from a higher level of dopamine and kind of reinforce behaviors and stuff. So that's why sometimes if there's a habit or something difficult you want to do, or maybe thinking deeply about something, it can feel more rewarding if you do it like as the first thing.
Yeah, it's probably true. I mean, when you sleep, everything gets recharged. So like the moment you wake up, it seems like pretty much, unless it's a particular chemical, everything's going to be the highest when you wake up, just because, that's what you were doing, was resetting, especially if you get good REM sleep. But yeah, doing shit you don't like, man, it's a part of life, and it sucks balls. Because I know he's not just talking about going and getting his DMV paperwork. Like, we're not talking about that. We're talking about like, you know, if you have I had a particular report, I had a particular person I had to talk to every week at a certain time. And I'm the type of person that's like, let's talk on fucking Monday, man. I don't want to think about this all week. I don't want to have to, I want this shit out of the way. Or if I'm bad at it, I want to have whatever experience be tied into the rest of the week so I can figure things out to do better the next week, better the next week, better the next week. I also ask friends a lot of times, or I look for experts in a field because I had a field that was well beyond my ability, or people who are well beyond my ability to even understand. And asking them, you would get that typical thing where they're talking and you're like, I don't understand what the fuck this person's saying, because they're well beyond you. So going and finding somebody not connected and saying, hey, man, or reading a article they might have written or whatever, and you can be like, okay, this person's explaining it like I'm 12. You read that enough, then you find somebody who explains it like they're 15. We've talked about this with science. You don't go to fucking Krauss first, or astrophysics. Why would you go to Krauss first? You might as well just fucking assume you're going to read a book in another language. It's not going to make any sense when you go to Krauss first. But if you go to somebody else first, even a couple wikis, then when you finally go in, you're like, okay, now I think I get it. Now I think I sort of understand. But that's a tough one, man. What's the worst? Can you say what the worst thing you have to do? Okay, yeah, probably. That's probably not a fair question to ask. I was going to ask you at work, like, what's something that but I don't want anybody hearing this. Like, God forbid one of your coworkers is like, Johnny hates talking. What about, how about this? Go back long enough that this will not cause issues. Is there something 5-10 years ago when you started the job or whatever that you really lamented doing at your job? You lamented because it was tough, you were bad at it, or you hated it because it existed?
Still to this day, debugging is absolutely horrid. Mm-hmm. For things like C++, which in case people don't know, it's a language that it's difficult to see what's going wrong, because what you'll see is like, oh, memory fault, and now good luck trying to figure out where from the 20 levels of indirection in your code, like where something's going wrong. And it's just a super, super painful process.
I would say,
luckily I don't do it a lot anymore.
Oh, so technically, because of your time there or what you're doing now, you're a manager now, I know. So you said there's obviously going to be a little less, but you now have to do that less. That's cool.
Exactly.
That's a step up, because
man,
dude, debugging, especially when I've had I've had awesome bosses mostly, but I did have a bad boss who would and my dad, I've told this story, but my dad was really bad because he was really tired all the time, and he would come home and he'd be like, you didn't mow the lawn in lines well enough. You need to go out there and remow the entire lawn. I'd be like, which part of the lawn? Because it was 3 acres. And he'd be like, that part over there. And he would flash his hand, and I'd be like, okay, so we had 3 lawns. It'd be mid lawn, high lawn, and low lawn being the biggest. And my hope would always be that he would be talking to me in a direction where if he went like this with his right hand, he would always be pointing at a small lawn. So what did I do as a small kid? I learned to talk to him and ask him a question while he was facing a certain way. This is how kids work, man. I had to really work a system. So I would legitimately come around the kitchen table to ask him a question, hoping that his right hand would aim towards a small lawn. But then he would go, and that was and you work at jobs like that, where sometimes you have a boss go like this, and this happens with debugging, where sometimes the debugger won't tell you where it is. It'll just be like, memory fault, or Windows 404, not 404, sorry, but a blue screen will pop up on Windows and be like, you had a hardware
no
kernel
other
error,
indication.
You're just like, well, that doesn't fucking help me. And especially, have you ever, on Windows, for instance, and this can happen on anything, you just be sitting there. You're not like, let's say you're watching a YouTube and it crashes and you're all, there was no database running. There was I was watching, like, does it not like science? It crashed during a science podcast. You know what I mean? So you're stuck just doing that. I could see you hating that. I don't know. Were you good at it? Even if you hated
Not particularly.
it? Yeah.
I could do it, like, but it's definitely what the question asked, which is like something you're not very good at, you hate doing. Like, you can get the job done, right? But it's always going to be the worst part of your week. So it does make sense what you're saying. Like, get it out of the way.
Yeah.
I think for a long time I was doing the opposite, like early in my career, which was like leaving stuff.
Putting it off, baby.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then it just the worst feeling ever.
Putting it off.
Because the anticipation of it is worse than the thing itself.
Oh, it's so bad. And think about it this way. You do it on Monday, you run into an issue, but it's not due till like a couple days later. You can ask people, you can be like, there's just so many more tools and resources you can use. And then if at the very least you continue to suck at it, at least it's out of the fucking way. Because every single thing I would always do at work, I would make sure wasn't on my Thursday or Friday. Like you and I, we talk on a Friday for a reason. You know, it's like I want the good stuff.
Right.
I wouldn't.
Yeah.
I don't know what exactly I hate in this job. Let's say editing. I'm not a fan of editing. I would never in a million, billion, gillion years plan on doing editing on a fucking Friday. That would be ridiculous. That would be.
Yeah.
I would stop this job so quick if all my editing was on a Friday. I'd be like, this is the worst idea ever. So
it's like closing a sandwich with, I don't know.
What do you mean?
Yeah,
closing
my metaphor didn't go far. I was thinking of like closing your sandwich with
something
that
don't
sucks.
Like, with something that sucks.
Yeah. Like horrible.
No, that is right. I get what you're saying. Yeah. No, that is right. If you guys get a chance, check out. If you want to continue discussions like this with Johnny and I, we're always in the chat. You can jump in as a patron or as a YouTube member. Let's see. Dragon Age was a nightmare. These are people talking about difficulty. Souls have organic difficulty quite often. In Elden Ring, for example, you can run straight at Margit and die. Or you can level up and look for better gear. I'm not quite sure if that's... I think you might be misconstruing difficulty with opportunity. Just an FYI.
Yes, I mean, that's certainly you can make it more difficult for yourself if you want to.
Yeah.
Like going in at a lower level, or like limiting yourself to not using certain things, right? So, like saying, hey, no summons, right? That's a very typical thing that people do.
Right. Yeah. I think it's easy to also with opportunity to get messed up on that, especially because accessibility comes into the thing. People will say, oh, this game needs to be more accessible to this type of gamer, this type of gamer. Not understanding that the language is different. Difficulty does not mean accessibility. Accessibility is like getting through the door. Difficulty is what happens on the inside of that building. And people get confused that accessibility is like offered all the way throughout something. That's not actually sort of what we're talking about here. It's more like, can you get in? Yeah. Well, from that point on, you're on your fucking own. But we're going to make sure that, like for you with eyes and your color blindness, it's like, we're going to adjust the color blindness so you can see those things, but we're not going to adjust the difficulty so that those things are easier. And so for the next Dark Souls game, they could adjust it so you had color blind. That would be the accessibility, which is you can now access and therefore interact with it. But we're not fucking changing the difficulty for you because we've already gone the step of the accessibility part. There's a difference. I think it gets really easy for people to get confused when they're talking about it. They try to bunch it up into one thing. And
the one gray area, because I agree with you, like the accessible part is, do you have the tools to be able to engage with the game?
Yeah.
And do we give you the workarounds in case you don't have those tools fully at the level? Do we give you workarounds for you to be able to still, be able to play? I think the gray area is stuff like the parrying that we see so much. Even, for example, Expedition 33, there wasn't an accessibility option for that.
Yeah, I know.
Right? You could turn off the defensive QTEs, but you still needed to dodge and parry. And it was very tight. Even people who were very good at these games were saying, the parry was extremely tight.
Yeah.
So I think that's an example where it could feel bad for some people. I can understand why some people would drop the game because of that.
Yeah. I would say, I mean, yeah, that game is a weird one because, dude, even in my Discord, I caught this. I was trying to explain why some people had dropped the game in our Discord, and I had one person who I could tell as the conversation was going, they were boiling up to start being like, I hated the game. And I'm like, listen, fuck, man. I mean, goddamn. We need to be able to like discuss stuff. And just because I've never heard anybody say that. And I'm like, dude, scroll up. Somebody said it like four fucking lines above you. It's okay to talk about it. I think with that one in particular, you look at what they wanted to offer. They wanted to offer what they offered. They did so, and it worked out quite well for them. However, it didn't work out well enough that they didn't hear enough complaints that they've adjusted things. That's okay. Is that not what we want? Like, is that... No, we don't want that. It's like, I don't know what you want then. At some point, we have to give them a little freedom to offer what they offer. We respond, whether bouncing off of it or engaging with it. And then this is why patches are great. You hear people say, I wish every game was complete. Well, I'll tell you what, if we, or I wish there was no such thing as any kind of patch systems. I'm like, listen, man, I'm just going to tell you right now that if we're going to pretend that, then we also have to pretend that patches to improve accessibility would no longer be offered as well. That seems to me to be sort of a loss. Oregon Fresh says, Expedition 33 had builds that made the game possible without parrying or dodging from the very beginning of the game. I thought those builds required you to play the game. Did they?
I think right. I think you have to work up to, at least I'm not aware of anything.
Was there an option right at the starting? Because I did not see that. If there was a build right from the very beginning of that game that allowed for you to jump in, because there's builds for everything. But if you had the ability to jump in there right away, I think a lot of people missed that one because I didn't hear about it.
But I think it's also, maybe there is, but we've both played through the entire game and we didn't find it. So it's like,
I found the ability later on to do it, but not the ability
later on.
Front.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. But I didn't want to play it because then if you're doing that, then you're not able to engage the actual parts of the game.
Yeah, you're not engaging.
You're forced
I don't think
into
that's
a particular avenue.
Yeah, I don't think that's the right answer. I would have liked to see like an easier mode.
Yeah. I think... What do you guys think in chat about easy modes? So here's the thing, man. As long as it doesn't require an add-on, and if it's built into the game day one in their creation of the game, I think that's awesome and should be done. But if in my brain I'm writing a fantasy book and somebody says, I can't believe you don't have espresso coffees in your game, I'm going to be like, dude, you might be in the wrong place. So if they're really distinctly about not doing that, I am okay with it. But if you start day one and you're writing out your idea of the game and you and I are sitting there at the whiteboard, we're writing out like what our ideas are for the game, I think you and I would both mention accessibility. One, because I like to play games at weird difficulties, and I do know that means accessibility is different. You have a very real color blindness issue of a very particular type, so you would bring that up day one, or early. That's awesome.
Yeah.
What I don't like is when, a developer's halfway through, didn't do it for whatever reason. Maybe it's a genre that is not normally done, and then people throw a fit, and you're like, come on, man. Come on. Seriously. Like, that, they didn't think about it. That's just sort of the thing. I think that one was very weird because they did offer one to turn off the ability for one thing and not for the other. I think that actually
not
confused.
Yeah.
We had people even in the Discord who were like, I got the game and I can see you can turn it off, but I'm trying to turn it off for over here. And I'm like, yeah.
Especially because the ones you can't turn off are the trivial ones.
That is true. Yeah.
Literally.
Right? That is true. That is true. They are technically the lesser.
Yeah, and then you need
things.
extreme precision for the other ones, which you can't turn off.
Flexamecha says, I have 3 daughters, a house to take care of, and 3 daughters. Damn. A lot of Y. Y chromosome. I have 3 daughters, a house to take care of, very busy. Easy modes let me enjoy my hobby without being held back.
Yeah. Listen, I have a friend that jumped into Lies of P, and it's his first Souls game ever.
Right.
It's a tough one. It's a tough first Souls game.
Yeah.
Awesome that he has so I told him, listen, dude, bump it down to easy, see how it feels.
Right.
And he's loving the game. It's a great difficulty for him because he doesn't need to interact perfectly with all the systems. Like get your parry, get the stagger, and the the visceral hits. Because if you're not doing those things, the game is going to feel almost impossible, and it's too overwhelming for him at this point. But it doesn't mean that later on he'll be able to bump that up because he's getting used to all the system.
Agreed.
But it's awesome to have the option.
Zaxby, not as many kids as Garrick. Just kidding. Yeah, supposedly I have like, what was this? Some jackass on Reddit was saying that I had like a couple kids and I was married 7 times. I was like, dude, what the fuck? You don't have 7 sisters. I couldn't have been married 7 times. He says, just kidding. I do want to say, Zaxby, hope you're doing well. I haven't talked to you in a couple days. Hope all is going well for you. Yeah, it's an odd discussion to have. I think difficulty is also something that when you are allowed to adjust it, there's something comforting about a game. Let me explain this so that you understand where I'm coming from, because I'm going to make a comparison that you will understand right away. There's something nice sometimes about a game with no difficulty, because no difficulty slider, because you can be like, I don't get it. I don't understand. And it's sort of comforting to be like, there's a mysteriousness I don't get. Because the opposite, for example, Android chess games, where the fucking game says you can have a difficulty of your Android chess opponent at 1 to 10, and you're like, I'm doing 1 well, I'm doing 2 well, I'm doing 3 well. You get to 4 or 5,
instantly smoked.
What it's like, yeah, it's like Doral in Virtual Fighter. You beat everybody, you get to the boss, and the boss is like, bitch, you chose the wrong son of a bitch to come face. I'm telling you, Android, I've won 1 game on one of the Android chesses at 8 once. I think I might have done well 1 time on 9 after thousands of games. But if I wasn't able to choose, I could always be like, man, what the fuck? This game, it's cheating or whatever. But instead, I was able to crank it. I was able to slide up, and there's something about it that sort of sucked, because I was like, I chose this. And it's almost like this cap I know I'll never get up. Not never. I mean, I could play for ages and possibly do well at 7 or 8 all the time. I don't think I would, but man, Android chess, you think it's a fucking mobile device? There's no way it knows. Oh, does it know? Fuck, dude.
And it's crazy, that spike too, where you'll go from one to the next, and it's like, you know that feeling when you're in math class? Yes. Everything's making sense. You're starting, it's like, okay, 4 plus 4 is 8. I good.
Got it. 4 plus 4 is 8. I'm acing
You look
this.
away.
Yeah.
Dude, you get distracted by something. You look away for 5 minutes. And when you're going back, it's like, hold on, how did we get to Fourier transforms like in this space of time? And you're lost.
Mine was calculus.
Like you lost the plot.
Mine was calculus, man. I'd done everything else, and we had to take one class of calculus. And I remember going in, and the language had it had transformed. And I remember same teacher, Mr. Beckham, if you take and that's how he talked. And I remember listening for an entire class, and that class got over, and I was like, oh no, it's not only that I don't understand, it's that I don't think I can give the energy, and I'll come out the other end to understanding. I mean, the words, Johnny, it was like, oh man, I guess it would be like grabbing a book that you thought was in English and you've read it before, and somehow somebody's changed the words to Japanese. And you know how Japanese and English letters
it's like a new notation. You're not even.
Dude, it was I remember just going like, oh no, like and I had failed before because of the lack of attempt, for sure. You're a kid, you do stupid stuff, your lack of initiation and energy. This was the first time where it was a wall of like, I'm fucked. I'm well and truly fucked. And then they moved me to something else, and it was still like, whoa, we're getting to this point. Oh, I was talking to Solar. I think I went from that to geometry, and geometry was a little easier, but there were still a lot of things about geometry even that I was like, damn, this is a little, because that math to shape, math to like, and then you'll get a teacher who's like, and of course, and it's just like Lawrence Krauss, and of course, and you're like, listen, bitch, first of all, you're in high school. There is no of course. Don't ever use of course in a math class, because it makes everybody sound like a fucking idiot when you're like, when you're in front of 23 kids and you're like, well, of course, and you get 3 kids in the back going, of course, what?
Like should I have known that already? Like
where the fuck is this? Of course. Yeah. And you're looking at it going, of course, what? Like, I don't even know what the of course meant. A1 Nangle, $10. What's up, buddy? He says, would you rather win 100 games in a row at level 7 or lose 100 games in a row at level 8? Okay, this is going to sound like a lie. I would much rather, and we're talking about in a row, I would much rather lose without a shadow of a doubt 100 games in a row, because I do like to Billy Goat my way through things, and I do think that it would probably solidify the idea in my brain I couldn't do better. I'd be like, okay, level 7 is where I need to be. I don't know. What do you think, Johnny? Would you rather? We're talking about chess, I think, is what he's. I took it as chess.
Yeah, assuming it's chess. I mean, I think it's a tough one. Obviously, it sucks to just lose, right? It's not that fun. However, you also learn a lot more in the sense that if you're playing at an easier level than what your level is, you have tools in your toolkit that work consistently that will basically win you games, and that just won't work at a higher difficulty. So you're gonna have these like things that work really well for you at this level, and that means you're also not having to learn. You're talking
about becoming motor set. So you have a pattern or a skill, and your brain isn't engaging because you're utilizing that pattern, almost like a combo versus.
Yes. Yeah, like a combo.
Okay, I see that.
Yeah, I mean, both suck, man. But I don't think you learn too much playing with people under your level, because I sometimes I've had that where like I just have the chess app, the chess.com, and I'll play against random people sometimes. And oftentimes it will put you with someone way under your level just because the matchmaking is weird.
Right.
And it doesn't feel like I learned anything, right? Because I was just able to smoke that person. I got like a 1-piece advantage, and from there they literally had no chance.
Right. I can tell you this. Chess. Just chess. I think you're absolutely right. However, I can tell you where this does not track very well. Martial arts.
Ooh.
Listen to this. You'll get a white belt in there, and they will, or a lower belt, they will perform moves that should never, you should never attempt that, and they will hit people a lot. So you might see in the UFC, you'll see somebody do a move that everybody's like 100 times out of 100, that fails. This is 101. They're outside the box. That succeeded this one time. So I do learn a lot from in martial arts, where you'll see somebody messing up, and when you're fixing their mess up, you'll look and go, you know what though? In a particular, if I'm training to never do that and you're training to never do that, then if I train to do that, there is a actual number you could figure out where that would work against you, and would be a useful thing. But that's probably one of the few I can say that. You certainly wouldn't utilize that while driving. I think that's probably one of the few. Yeah. I think with chess, I definitely. Yeah. Yeah. When they introduced imaginary numbers, I decided I no longer cared. I'm sure he's talking about Zaxby, math is geek symbols. Shadow says, what's the hardest game that only has one universal difficulty? I mean, I think hardest, I won't say hardest, but I think Liza P. Parry window was pretty tight. And also there were some oddities there. I would say hardest game with no... Oh, dude. Did they have a fucking difficulty slider in the shooter by the House Marquee guys for the PlayStation game?
Returnal.
Returnal. Did they have a difficulty slider for Returnal? Because I don't think they did. So Returnal crushed so many Dark Souls streamers' dreams because they were planning on streaming that.
Yeah.
And I remember behind the scenes people being like, oh my God, I'm not good at this. I'm good at Dark Souls. I can't believe it. And it's like, dude, one's a third person shooter in a space world. And
where's the transferable skill from Souls?
Right. You're going to have to deal with it. That one, I would say, and Cuphead didn't have a difficulty at the... Oh, no, Cuphead did. Cuphead did.
Did it?
I believe Cuphead did. Yes. right?
I think
Cuphead
it might have.
I think
yeah.
Cuphead, it was just their easy was everybody else's expert. I could be wrong on that, but I know Returnal didn't, so I'll go with Returnal.
Yeah,
Man.
that game did humble me too. It was tough, man.
Returnal,
yeah,
dude, it was a game, man. It was, and I enjoyed the the shit out of it. But I gotta tell you, it took ego is awesome to have, but there's that fine line between ego and confidence, man. You know, and ego will have you go into the battle and not pay attention because you think you should beat it. Confidence will have you understand that you could do that maybe, but if you can't, you should use the other tools at your, other tools at your grip, in your area to sort of figure out a way to get through it. Spooner says something. I was actually going to say this, so I'm going to shout this out. Spooner says, I feel like Neo 1 was insanely hard compared to 2. I would say that Neo as a whole, there are times where I was playing Neo going, man.
Yeah, it was crunching.
There's some crunch. yeah, but and I played without the souls because remember I did the review. You couldn't summon.
Without the summons.
There was no good or bad guys
did it
for
have
like
summons,
a full
or was it?
It had the guys who were dead. Red meant that they would come up as enemies. Blue meant they revenants or something. I can't remember the term. And then blue, they would join you. So you could. And I didn't have those for the first week of the review. It was just like, well, yeah. So I was gonna say I think Neo 2 felt harder to me, but that might have just been in the moment I was playing it because of how the review code went. Yeah, that's cool. Just to add onto what I said, I have 2 daughters, and like Izumoto, I also respect the devs' creative choices to admit it. Yeah, me too. Me too. We can't be here and talk about individuality and how cool games are because people can be indie and people can be AAA and then be like, but you all have to do this, which is such a weird.
Do you like skill walls in games? This would mean like you're doing great, and then suddenly here's for some people it was Margit in Elden Ring, just give an example.
For me, it was the guy on the bridge, which I believe people told me wasn't even, if I remember right, it was Elden Ring.
Horse guy?
No, it was you go in the bridge, you fight him, then you go a little farther and there's another guy. And I've known that Absy and I dissected this for a couple hours in a podcast a year ago. I can't remember his name, but I remember I was like, I don't understand. I was getting knocked off the bridge. I was getting all kinds of crazy shit. And once I defeated him, every enemy in the game was easier. So skill walls are great, but I don't want them to remove all the difficulty. But I think skill walls, I like when a skill wall, Johnny, when you find out it's not telling you, it's not like he's magically got no parry window. I like it when it's just that the tools you used required 1 + 1 = 2, and you jump into that guy and he's like calculus today, and you're like, oh fuck. But if
right, exactly.
But if it makes sense, if you're like, oh, I get it. It can't be. For example, you'll get a boss where if you have a combo that's A-B-A and it works on everybody, and he shorts you at A-B, I like that. Because I'm like, oh, whoa.
Yes.
Okay.
That's adaptation.
AB, that's great, dude. I love that. When you go in and you're like, AB, oh, fuck, what? Oh, I must have timed that wrong. And you try it again, and then he shorts you again, and you're like, wait, uh-oh. But then you find out that Y, which maybe doesn't work on anybody else, for whatever reason, they've made it so that boss, a hard hit on that boss when you're a little far away and you can leap in, doesn't trigger, and you're like, oh, I get it. And now I can hit ABA. I love that. I love it, man. Yeah, it's such a good feeling.
And the feeling later when you face prior enemies and they feel super easy. The palpable skill progression.
Yeah.
It's
Except expectation cliff is a real thing. And that is where you run through easy guys and somehow that son of a bitch hits you on your way to a boss as you're trying to kite him or run past him. Dude.
Yeah.
I hate that. I do hit that a lot where I don't need to fight these guys. I just want to get over here. So you've got your pattern, right? You're slick, you're moving, you're dodging. You're like, fucking, you guys can't. And some dude randomly hits you.
Off tempo. He will
off tempo. and you have planned to have full health and 3 heals or full health and blah, 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 and he hits you.
Yeah,
and now,
absolutely.
And now you have the choice, right? The letdown of, do I continue and just live with it? And the old 2D platformers were that way, Johnny. Ghouls and Ghosts was a great example of that, where you would sort of estimate how much you would have at the end boss. And if you shortchanged, you'd be like, maybe I'll just restart this, you know?
Yeah, can't even attempt it.
Can't even attempt
You know, I think these corpse runs are a vestige of older Souls games.
Right.
I don't think they add anything. I don't know about you, but every time I have to, like, let's be real, unless you're some amazing challenge runner, you're going to have to repeat bosses in these games.
Right.
That's, like you said, you know, even like probably the best way to do it is what you described, which is you're going to go for a few runs, just learning the moves and just like dodging stuff and understanding what's happening, what's being thrown at you. So by definition, we have to repeat these fights. Why do I have to run past like several enemies and like walk a bunch of distance to get there? Why are we padding the time between attempts? What I want is like, I want to cycle this thing, you know, I want as many reps as I can. And I think it just doesn't serve any purpose.
Yeah. I mean, I sort of agree.
Like, plant me at the boss.
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah, I sort of agree, man. I don't know what to think about that because, no, see, I don't like, I don't like them. But then there are times where when you get to the boss, you're like, oh, I need to grind a bit. And so you can grind during the corpse run. You know what? Or not the corpse run, but like the run back to the boss. Like, I don't know, man. I firmly am in agreement with you, but then I have found myself using those times. I guess it's ego again. If I'm going to be forced to do it, I usually will try to figure out, how do I make this be as useful to me as humanly possible? If that makes sense. Like, yeah, if I'm gonna, I can see that. How am I gonna, you know? But I don't like them most of the time, and I hate them in games that don't make sense. Star Wars, that Star Wars bonfire, man, get it out of the game. It's such a waste of a good design ideas. Otherwise, that's interesting you say that, man. What do you guys think in chat, or if you're listening audio? Do you like? How about this? If you're forced to do, we'll ignore the corpse run for a second because that's a little different. If you're forced to do a run to a boss, because technically killing those guys is going to give you no return, that kind of stuff, do you just do it and listen to a podcast, which I think a lot of people do? They're just like, all right, I'm going to zone out while I run. Or do you try to find a way where it's useful to you? It's a good thought process, man. I don't know. I think it goes both ways. For example,
Wukong did it pretty well overall.
Wukong, yeah, definitely, dude.
Like, there were a couple where you had to trek quite a while to get back to the boss, but those stand out because everywhere else it was done very well without having to do that. So those were like the 2 times you remember being annoying, but everywhere else they did a good job of.
And a lot of times it feels like sort of like engagement optimization layering. It's like, look at us. We've got a corpse grind. The game is longer. And you're like, not really. That's just sort of a way to pad out your game. You know, it's like, how long, that's why you know, I've talked about this. How long is the game? Oh, it's 80 hours. And you're like, but is it? You know, is it 80 hours or is it really 30 hours with me corpse grinding the shit out of stuff or corpse running the shit out?
Yeah.
I really like Lords of the Fallen version of corpse runs where you find a spendable resource. Didn't Lords of the Fallen also, isn't that the one where you went to the other world?
Yes.
That to me is awesome. Dude, see.
Yeah, the 2 worlds, magic. Great idea. Yeah.
That is fucking amazing. Because it changes it. You start to use it. You start to look at it in a different way than just that grind. Because the grind isn't just the grind of fighting and leveling. It's the grind of running. It's the grind of boredom a little bit. And yeah, I forgot that game. That game did it well, very well. Oh, let's see. What else do we got here? Let's go through. That was Kig. I feel like that went from answering Kig's question into difficulty in real life, into difficulty in games,
we went
and then back
all over the
we
place.
did. Solly says, how much loot's too much loot? I started playing the Division 2 again after about 2 years, and man, every time I get a loadout I enjoy, I get loot bombed and sit there recalibrating all my equipment. Just hit level 34, so I'm hoping in-game is where you finally get to breathe. You do Diablo, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like too much. I feel like the loot is the game. And therefore, if there wasn't a bunch, there would be disappointment. But I think I get where he's coming from, especially with Division, because you just get so much and the menus suck. But what do you think of that? Like, how about this? If you could, and you probably can, so if I'm wrong, or if this is possible, give me a heads up. But when you're playing Diablo, can you tell it to only show you to just don't drop grays, drop purples, and if there's no purple, drop nothing?
Yeah, you can filter out what you see. So basically, you're not seeing all the shit. Yeah, that's a great way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, it's tough, right? Because you want a lot of loot, but you also want that moment where something legendary drops and it's like, whoa.
Yeah.
It's a tough balance. Like, how rare should that be of a thing?
But I also think that at some point, so Division, every single item you get, whether old or new, is usable in an upgrade or crafting path. There is no, you can destroy stuff if you want, which will give you items for upgrading, or you can sell it, which gives you money. Or you can grab that item and upgrade it via proficiency. So those are all usable. So let's talk about a game where they're not, for whatever reason. It doesn't have a crafting, or at a certain level, it's just not
like
going to help you.
Neo was not useful.
Okay, Neo was not useful. Borderlands might not be useful. I can't remember how Borderlands handled the lower level stuff.
Yeah, not too much.
Money,
you could
maybe?
recycle, but yeah, money doesn't matter. So
yeah. How much loot is too much? I mean, I guess if it doesn't impact the game in the way I'm talking about, then that definitely sucks. I mean, because then you're just, inventory is the game, which blows.
I think that's a good point. I think it touched onto something. It depends. How's the inventory management?
Right.
Is it still really like streamlined and smooth? Then it's fine to have a lot of loot at the end of the day. If the inventory management feels, feels fun and rewarding.
I also get that backtracking enlightenment loop where I'll be like, oh, I missed this thing. I left it. I'm going to go grab it because I bet you it's useful. Then you go back and you're like, fuck, it's not useful. And I get that too, where you waste time because there is so much. Your brain can't calculate all those. It's like a different engine, and your brain can't calculate it. And then, so what happens is, I think there's a fatigue that occurs where people are just like, whatever. And I definitely have got that in games where I'm like, you know what? I know they're useful. I know they can be used somewhere else, but my empathy is gone. For like that, I just don't care about those things anymore, and I drop them. Any Team Ninja game, then you'll learn about too much loot. Team Ninja. What are some of the games?
Yeah, Neo. If you remember, you're getting endless copies of like the same items over and over. They just have slightly different stats.
All right, let's do it. Here we go. You ready? I'm going to pose to you a question. Anybody in chat can answer too. Let's do it. How do you make a loot system that's good? So let's take a game we played. You played Division, but you played more Diablo. I played enough that I guess we can use Diablo. So it's a game where you run around and it's all about increasing abilities. But let's say that the game has endless enemies, meaning you don't have to repeat the location. So you're just moving forward. So it's just about the loot at this point. How do you make a loot system that works within that? What does it have? What's your if you had your druthers, what's the loot system that you would like to see in a game like Diablo?
That's a tough question. I think the main thing is minimize the amount of stuff I need to do to maintain my inventory. That's a big one, like we were saying. So, for example, Baldur's Gate was very heavy maintenance on the inventory.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I think also make it so that I don't need to spend a lot of mental power deciding what to pick up. Because I think part of the problem too is when you have a piñata of loot and you're now having to sift through all of it to see, did I get something usable or not?
Right.
I think Division, if I remember correctly, that was a bit of a problem. But I know they've revamped some of the inventory management. It's better now. But that was a thing, like, is this better? Like, you know, the number looks kind of better, but it's a slightly different stat, so I'm actually not sure, you know. I like systems where I can really tell if an item is better objectively. So I think that's important. But yeah, it's tough, man. You know, you got to hit those dopamine highs with the legendary drops and stuff, make them meaningful, but still
Here's what
rare.
I would like. I want a system where I come up upon loot and I can hit a single button that is called, we'll call it feedback. You hit a button, the loot disappears, and that means the next bit of loot you get will be slightly increased via the loot you just ignored. Not a ton, maybe half. So if it was a +2 to damage, and let's say you have a game with tons of damage, as in you're going to do tons of damage. So +1 or 2 isn't a ton. But that also indicates it isn't a ton, so why would you pick it up and engage in the inventory track? So that would be one part, the ability to bank loot and say, I don't want this. I want blah, blah, blah. And so it just banks it in there. Maybe even it does a behind-the-scenes lottery system where for each of the low-level ones you got that would be a +1, it slightly increases your chance of the next one being a +3, whatever. But you're able to just run through the game, fight, and say, bank that loot, I don't care, bank that loot. That would be one part of it for me. I've always felt that that kind of reward system of playing and banking loot, especially if you're fighting low-level guys, the loot bank isn't going to do very much, but it'll do a little bit. But higher-level guys, ignoring stuff will do more. Also, get away from the plus to negative. I fucking... D&D does this, and we don't have it in my games usually, but I hate +1 to dex, -1 to strength. Fuck off. I'm so tired of that. It's like, just give me the plus. I don't need the mini-maxed. Every item I get has a plus to this, but a minus to this. And so the only way to technically get that to truly be a plus is to go grind away crafting and get it ++, and that takes you 2 times as long. So I would do away with those. I would also just do less loot. I would have meaningful loot, and I certainly love the idea of killing guys and they're dropping stuff. But the idea either, like I said, to bank it quite quickly or to just make it lean so that, like you said, where you can say, I don't want to see gray stuff. If it's unusable, just, you know, I don't need to see it at all. Those 2 things would go a long way. Second, there needs to be a hot button for inventory if your game's about inventory. Sorry. This bullshit where you press up and you go into the story, first you see the map, then you go down
2 menus, like, dude, I'm so fed up with this.
I'm done with inventory shit. I'm done with a combo to get into my inventory. Who fucking thought that was a good idea?
I want it fast.
Up, down, A, B, B, A, X, hold Y to get into your inventory. It's like, what the fuck are we doing right now? But if you have a hot button,
slow-moving menus away from
Ubisoft menu. You're like, come on, guys. So those would be the 3 I would do right away. I've always liked the idea of banking because you could even say, you know, the super low-level stuff will give you a super small chance, but you don't have to worry about it. It's a system that's off the side. And then the stuff you have to worry about, you would be able to alter. I like the idea of not being able to see it if you don't want to see it. I think that's great. And then, again, no mini-maxing. +1, -1. It needs to die in a fire, a delightful fire. I would celebrate that to the ends of the earth, this bullshit, because that's the grind. People think, I'm not saying people think. People can like what they like. I feel that the mini-maxing is where the grind begins and what I hate. I just do not like the reward and reward and failure in the same weapon. Also, if you're gonna do fire, elemental, all that kind of stuff, I think it should be less often. I feel like a lot of games give you a fire bonus, but they lower the normal damage. And so when you have a sword, and then you have a sword you got 2 hours later, but somehow the sword you got 2 hours later is duller and doesn't do as much normal damage, but does fire damage now, you're like, come on, guys. Can we just figure out a way to, like, you know, pare it down a little bit? But on the other hand, I'm not the premier buyer of these, and I know that people who do buy them love the, I mean, hey, everybody loves the, you know, the Peter North facial of fucking items exploding into the air. It's great.
Right.
But at some point, great turns to just grating, you know, where it's grating on you. And you're like, I really wish we could get away from it. But
yeah, it's a part of it is that you can't please everyone. And a lot of people that play these games are after the best in slot fantasy, which is, you know, I'm going to grind my ass off to get that one item that is the best I can have on chest or, you know, whatever.
Yeah. Doom Reaper says every RPG needs a pet like Torchlight that can sell items. Yeah, Fate started that originally. Travis Belcher did Fate, and he was the idea of having a pet. You send the pet off who sells items. Now you don't have a pet to assist you, so you've lost the bonuses from the pet, but they can sell the items back at the store, and that worked quite well. It indicates you have an inventory issue, but it also at least alleviates going back to some jackass who's in a city you'll never go back to, other than to sell shit. Which, that's the other thing in games, right? Dude, the city that you saw one time and you're like, wow, this is a great city. And you know from that point on, you will never engage with that city again, except to sell stuff. Or Division does this. They have the same stuff in your inventory and menus as they do in the city. So you walk up to a guy in the city and he's like, projects. And you're like, oh, great, project. Oh, I already have projects. It's just in my menu. Like, you're just doubling up here. You know, at some point you need to figure out a reason why it's with this guy, or you need to figure out a way to just get it in the inventory. But having it in both places is bothersome. I think we've come up with some good ideas here. It'd piss off 90% of people. Like, can you imagine Lucitan playing a game I'm talking about? That dude would be like, what the fuck? This is the worst game ever made. Good question, though. Thank you for that. Let's see. Let's get through these. Green Saturn says, what's your favorite fictional crush? Ooh. Chloe from Longest Journey Dreamfall. For sure. That would be mine.
Okay, yeah. I could see that. Biggest crush.
Somebody from Persona? Or would it be like Tifa from Final Fantasy? Or would it be somebody that maybe...
I did like... I mean, Persona, the characters were very young, so they're outside of my
jurisdiction,
like, demographic.
Yeah.
But jurisdiction. I did like the one girl, Makoto, which she was very clever in Persona 5, and I thought that was really cool. So that one. Eve from Stellar Blade is great. I think her voice is awesome.
Yeah.
And then more recently, Lune from Expedition 33 was very pretty and had an amazing voice too.
And had an amazing series of clothing options that were nowhere near
clothing
the
choices.
Overt stuff we normally see, but like, you know, a nice dress and stockings. Like you were just, and like,
she had like a way of moving too, which was like, I don't know how to explain it. Like
the very eloquent, like almost graceful.
Gesticulating.
She was a well done actor well done character. Yeah. That's a really good. That's a really good.
Oh yeah. Tifa, you know, my issue with Tifa is that the Tifas are too big. And it's kind of like they're trying to make her into this teenage girl in some way. But on the other standpoint, she is absolutely stacked. And it's kind of...
It's on purpose. It's too on the nose.
Yeah, it's on purpose.
She was made for this question. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like where... like.
And I like her character. As a person, Tifa. I like her theme a lot, so it's always stuck with me as a great character. But like the current portrayal is a bit over the top.
Yeah, it's completely over the top. I mean, most of them are. It's one of the reasons why I like Chloe. There's absolutely nothing about her that's fits. Even Luna, or like when you look at her, it's like, okay, I can see definitely everybody in Expedition is fit as fuck. So they sort of by default are higher up. But the thing about Chloe is she was just a normal girl going through like tragic times that had a funny, sarcastic way of dealing with things, and was also not overly, sorry, but was more lodged in reality. I think the more unreal they become, the less I'm interested. So like the Tifas of the world, I'm like, whatever, doesn't do anything. I would also say when I was playing Jade Empire, and I can't believe I can't remember the name of the character that's with you, the female lead that's with you, but I really liked her. Dawnstar. Yeah, I thought Dawnstar was very well done. And you could say Star Wars, Knights of the Republic, as well as Jade Empire, as well as Mass Effect. Those guys in the BioWare had a particular female lead that they went with for the most part. There was always one, whether it be Ashley, whether it be the actress who played in Chuck. Can't remember her name. She's got a G in it, I think. But I think also recency bias is something I never play into. So I always give that's why I didn't pick a new one. Because I feel like recency bias has a tendency to be like, what's new and fresh? And usually it takes me a while to sort of identify if that character is really good or if they just look good. For example, a lot about, actually, now that I think about it, a lot about Expedition 33 characters I didn't like. So I don't think I would go with them. Like, I didn't really like them as characters. Not in this aspect. In the game, I liked them. I'm talking more like crush-wise. Do you know who I really liked? Miranda is who I meant, but I can't remember her name if you guys remember. Do you know who I loved is Elizabeth in BioShock Infinite. Tragic character, loved the character, loved the aesthetic, was
a bit like
beautiful,
Disney princess.
Bit like Disney, but sort of like old Disney, pretty weird going on the side. You're like, oh man, there's some broken stuff that's happened here. And this character's got like probably a hard future in front of him. That was good. That was fun.
Yeah.
Let's go on from there. Oh, Carrick, voice chat discussion struck again. We talked about Jeremy Soule, and nothing has popped up there, but we did talk about Don't Nod laying people off a couple days ago and Chris Avallone coming back, and your thoughts on that. And suddenly, that's what happened. Did you just bring them up randomly? I did. So this has become a running fucking joke. That was not on purpose. That was not me like hinting at something coming up. Those two in particular were completely us just happening to have a very odd situation where we discussed those. And then 12 hours later, both of those were announced. But yeah, Chris Avallone, who wrote a ton of really good games, is now working on a title. He's sort of back after some personal issues that had popped up in, gaming sphere with relationships with people. Don't Nod, unfortunately, is laying some people off after a couple games that didn't do great. And Jeremy Soule, haven't heard a word from. I don't think Jeremy Soule is going to be back. That's just me. Great composer, but
yeah, that sucks, man. Because a lot of people have come back after having one of these episodes.
I think Jeremy's is also the fact that he didn't nail that Kickstarter. Johnny, he did a big Kickstarter, and I still don't think he's delivered for that Kickstarter, and it's been like 6 years. So, at that point, double burned. Which forgotten minigame from gaming history deserves its own AAA game? Oh, which minigame in a game? How about this? Which minigame in a game would we love to see a full game be made into a game? There we go. There's game a lot. Is there a mini game that you've played where you're like, dude, I wish this was like a full... There's got to be some. I feel like you and I've talked about this. I feel like we've talked about it in the podcast. But what's a mini... Like card games, Final Fantasy. I know some people like the card games in those. Is there a mini...
Oh, yeah.
Do you see what I'm saying? Go ahead.
Oh, for sure, dude. Okay, yeah. But the question was also like forgotten mini games, right? So something...
Yeah, but it could be... I mean, I just said that and you said, oh, yeah, so that means you forgot it. So we'll just go with any mini game. Like, is there a mini game?
I did like the card game in Rebirth.
Rebirth.
A lot.
Yeah.
The Queens... No.
Yeah, it was Queen's something. Not Queen's Gambit, but Queen's something.
Not Gambit. Yeah. I'm thinking of Gambit, but something else.
Definitely not that.
Queen's Blood. Yeah. Queen's Blood?
Okay.
Maybe.
That was a good mini game.
That was a good. Someone said Blitzball from Final Fantasy X. That was a solid. Did you ever play that?
I don't
like in the water. You had the ball in the water, like playing like handball,
like
but
handball
floating in the water.
No, I don't think I've ever played that.
That was a solid.
Okay. That would be cool though. I've already sort of got an idea of what you're talking about. I actually like that. Aries says Cabaret Club and Yakuza. Let's see. So I would say I do like RC cars because that was going to be my answer too. Is Yakuza has a lot of their side things, and they've got the dragon cars or whatever they are on the tracks. And I grew up before RC cars were a thing.
Oh yeah.
So you couldn't drive an RC car; it had to be on a powered track, and I loved that because you really could see improvements with an engine or even aerodynamics.
Yeah.
And it really had nothing to do with it had something to do with the player. You couldn't gun it around a corner; you had to control your speed. I would play the shit out of that.
Right.
Mojo, that's what I thought was water polo as well. I don't know if that's that's quite literally what I was thinking when he was bringing it up. So I don't know if that's what it is.
But it's just fully submerged. They somehow could breathe underwater.
It was fully submerged? Okay, I'll have to check a video of this out because I've never seen this. That's hilarious.
It was literally a giant sphere of water that was like contained with magic, and everybody could breathe in the water.
I love that.
So they were just moving and like shooting goals and stuff.
Say what you will, but that's why that entices me because, I don't fucking care about The Last Wizard. I don't care about Lord of the Rings where everybody's going away and only one guy's got the power. I want everybody. I want magic to be used for frivolous things. In a world where magic is used to make water polo, that's awesome. I love that. To me, the idea of like, we got a bunch of time. We're going to waste our magical energy on making water polo in a giant water bubble. I'm like, dude, I'm there right now. Like
Let's go.
I dig it. I dig it. I don't need The Last Dragon, The Last Wizard. It's like, who gives a shit? Like that's too close to real life. I don't need to see that. I want over the top. Cool. I'll check that out. I've never seen that video. Never even heard of this. So hopefully it's good. It'll probably let me down because it probably looks ancient.
It does a little bit. Yeah.
What game do you irrationally defend even though you know it's mid?
Mid.
Shit.
Yeah.
You know it's mid. Dude, I don't have... Okay, you know it's... What game? You know it's mid. Okay. I got mine. Do you got one?
I'm still working on it.
Okay. So this is a game, I believe Obimus and myself might be the only two people in our Discord who like it. Maybe even experienced it. But there is a racing game. Doesn't look the best. Doesn't have the best anything. But it is a delight to play. And I have absolutely no regrets saying I liked the fuck out of it. And that is called Gravel. And it's rated in the probably 70 to 80 range, maybe. I'm sure there were lower. I'm sure there were higher. But I would say, I'm just going on what my idea of 70 to 80 would be. And I really enjoyed Gravel. For some reason, it hit the spot, and it was generically a fun racer that certainly has no high points, but it doesn't have any low points. So I think it's a perfection of the term mid for me.
Okay. Oh, someone said in chat, Johnny says League of Legends. I think that resonates with me because it has such a bad reputation for being a toxic game and like.
But
everybody
isn't the
says,
game considered good? It's considered balanced beyond belief. It's considered a strategic game par excellence.
Yes, but
So
it's
I don't
also
think that's
considered as a really bad life decision to ever have started playing it.
Yeah, but it's not. The
And-
game itself is not mid.
Yeah,
Right?
That's fair.
Like, dude, I mean, you know me. I'm gonna be the first one to say right away that fucking you have made a bad choice to play that. But I'm not gonna say it's mid. I think
It's mid. Yeah.
I think when you look at it, it's be impossible to say that's mid, right? Well,
yeah.
I mean, Rocket League might be the same way, even though I think Rocket League is more mid. I'm gonna say it. I think it's more mid than League of Legends.
Wow.
Yeah. Yep. I'm gonna say it. I'm gonna go out there. It's gonna get,
you know
it's
what?
gonna get clipped.
Logged Out Riders.
What?
Do you remember Outriders?
Oh, okay. You messed with the name. Dude, you had me going. I was like, wow.
Yeah, because the login wasn't working. So we kept calling it Logged Out Riders.
Yeah.
Had tons of issues. Okay.
Yes, it did.
But I played a lot of it. I have a lot of fun playing that, especially with a few friends too. But the game itself, I thought, was quite fun, despite the ridiculous mini cutscenes you had, like jumping a tiny bridge. It had so many of these little problems, but I thought there was a more fun game than what people gave it credit.
That's fair. It's fair as hell. Man, I was like Logged Out Riders. I had jumped to like the bike riding games. I was thinking of a logging game. I was like, what the fuck? How did I never hear about that? Doom says Alien Colonial Marines. That's a hot take, man. And I'm gonna damn. Spooner says Atomic Heart's mid. I haven't heard that before. Actually, I think Atomic Heart.
I don't think so. See, well, I think mid means it left you distinctly indifferent. And Atomic Heart does anything but that. You could not like it.
That is pretty true. Atomic Heart, it had some. Remember, you could tell, nobody wanted to admit it, but there was definitely a lot of discussion about Ukraine, Russia going on that was pretending to not go on.
Oh, yeah.
You'd be like,
yeah.
You could sort of see it in discussion around the game. You're like, dude, you're letting your real life get into this a little too much. Saboteur? Saboteur's old enough. I can't remember. I mean, I think Saboteur is pretty mid. Yeah, there were parts of Saboteur that were awesome. That was the game where it was black and white until you like took over an area and then it would turn to color to indicate like you've returned because you were part of the not rebellion but the not rebels. What's the term? Resistance.
Resistance. Yeah.
Dom says too many people play League for it to be mid. I don't know. Fortnite's out there. Just joking. I still don't know if Fortnite's mid.
What about that recent Star Wars game? What was it called?
Outlaws?
Outlaws. Is that a mid game for you?
Yeah. You know what's interesting, dude? What a fascinating like deja vu moment. This came up 2 days ago. Or randomly, I mentioned Outlaws as being a game that even with its improvements, you realize that it's still not there quite. Even with the fixes that have been done, it's not quite there as a game. Just like because I had bugs too, and the AI was a disaster. And some of the mission structures were disasters. And then when the fixes came, you play it, you're like, oh, doesn't mean it's terrible, by the way. That's the thing, is everybody thinks mid means terrible or something like that. Terrible means terrible. Gollum means terrible.
Yeah.
I love Turtle Rock's game called Evolve. I loved Evolve. Well, I should take that back. I didn't love Evolve, but I actually enjoyed the shit out of Evolve when it came out. And I really absolutely agree with that. That game was much more enjoyable than... but it had its issues, but I enjoyed it. I don't know if that's mid or not.
Was that the first asymmetric?
I don't know if it was the first, but it's the first that I remember. Like it being a part of the game, a big part, like monster, humans.
Yeah.
So the newness was there, the freshness was there, but they definitely had some issues, and then it died out. I don't even know. Does Evolve still work? Can you play
I don't
Evolve
think so.
Anymore? Is it? Oh man,
I don't believe so.
Damn, that's a shitter. Yeah, I think that's the big problem is some of these games, like you can't even go back and see if it's mid anymore because it doesn't exist, It's like Battleborn or Battleborn, right?
Battleborn, yeah.
Yeah, Battleborn.
The first hero shooter.
It's funny. I was talking to Total Biscuit about it on his podcast, and then privately, there was a lot I really liked about that game, but you can't even return to it because the single player was stuck in that always online for no reason. We're online kind of bullshit that we got for a while. What a crapper. Zaxby said Fortnite is refunding people through the FTC. He just got $250. FTC just gave me $250. Any other games you guys know of or remember that got a class action lawsuit that resulted in hefty payouts?
Huh.
That got all the way to a hefty God, I don't know of any. That got to a consumer payout like that. I don't think I know of any. It doesn't mean there aren't any. I'm just saying I can't remember off the top of my head. But congrats on the $250 for no reason. I mean, because that money would have been spent, right? You've shined it on. It's like the money's gone. So to randomly get $250 and you don't lose anything, you got your time playing the game. And this says, will the next Xbox be a PC, Johnny?
Yeah, so I saw a few articles this week talking about what the future may hold for the next Xbox. Like talking about based on what we're seeing with the Asus ROG. Like, could we just have basically like a PC box as our next Xbox, where it's like it's maybe a set of components in it, so to be standard in some way, but it's either third party or it's almost like a pre-built system, just running Windows. Since we're seeing more kind of going towards Windows for the portable too. Yeah. So is that maybe a direction?
Until they get rid of the decompress blocks on a console, which is their godsend, so that you don't have to roll it onto your CPU or GPU. I would say that they're going to look a great deal like it, but this is something that anybody who's followed, the moment they went to the architecture they've gone with, they have overlapped with PCs, which is why you see, I mean, in the same way you could see Sony is now, whatever their PlayStation 6 will be a PC in a way. Technically, you're going to be playing a lot of these games in multiple devices, wherever you want, whether it be a handheld. Sony's looking at a handheld. I'm sure it'll play and be compatible with their system, which means also it'll probably be compatible with their PC games a year later. So yes, in some ways, but especially decompress blocks, the ability to move decompression to GPUs is pretty good, but it just goes to show you how powerful a decompress block on a console is. They're ridiculous. And they are a huge deal. That's one of a couple chips, but I would say, yeah, we're going to get more of an aligning. And the idea I like to think of it is that if you want to be able to play it right away on a platform that's like lodged and has guaranteed support, the consoles will be better than a handheld. Handhelds will probably still be a little wishy-washy on support. But the console will be like, boom, that's your thing. You buy it here, your console's going to deliver. Might not deliver what you want, but it'll deliver your compatibility. So the only ones with guaranteed compatibility will be those. On either side. Just makes sense. That'll be where your compatibility layer is guaranteed. And then from there on, not so much. And you'll have the adjustment of which video card you have, CPU, RAM, all the other stuff that comes into it. But yeah. I mean,
because right now, do you?
Go ahead. Sorry, I apologize. I interrupted you. You said right now.
No. I was going to say that what we have right now is this streamlined OS that does the one thing, right? It plays games.
Yeah.
It may have a couple other things in it, but it's dialed in to the point where you can like press your controller and you're back in the game, right? I mean, it's almost instant with both Xbox and also PS5.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I guess you can suspend on PC, but it's just a different experience on PC, right? Yeah. You're turning on your PC, you have a bunch of services coming online, like, you're booting up different things. It's multi-purpose system where you can do anything you want with it.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of a a step too far, right? It adds a lot of extra stuff that people may not want to, like someone who buys a console, that to some extent they probably want to disengage from all that and just have the streamlined system.
And I think it won't ever really go away from that unless something changes, because you do have, for example, I have 5 windows up. A console is going to guarantee that most of the time you have one window up and you can't multitask. The task is games on a console. And I don't know if I want to go away from that. Is it true that gamers have PCs now more than ever? Yes. Is it true that they're playing 6-year-plus old games more than ever? Yes. I'm not 100% sure that's a positive, especially if you're looking at getting new stuff and having changes. So a system that its OS is distinctly aware that its main job is games, that's great. I will say Xbox One had Snap, which I loved. Snap allowed you to open up a window and still play, and that went away. I sort of dug it, but I do understand why you may not want too many of those, because then you're right back into the multi-threading bullshit that they've never really gotten their hands on. Every developer, by the way, says this. So this is not me saying it. This is like if you go and listen to any developer talk about gaming on PC, even on consoles, multi-threading, getting all those cores to do something and not be sitting there is quite difficult. On a console, at least, it's your games. That's where we're aiming. So no. And then I don't know if consoles will have something special too. If you look at the Switch, it does have something special. And the APUs where they have DLSS in them, they have blah, blah, blah. There are some bonuses to just being like, here's your system. It does games. Because there's a lot of people that just want to do that. Solar, for instance, got a PC. He's been talking about it. His friend got him a PC. Listen to this shit. Okay, Johnny, listen to this. His friend gave him a hand-down PC and a good video card. He's playing this for about the last 2 or 3 months. He decides, I'm going to need a new video card because this is an older video card. Now, remember, this is a hand-me-down PC that works, and it works quite well. He goes to get the GPU. He gets it home and realizes, my PSU isn't powerful enough for this GPU. No problem. I'm going to get a new PSU. So he goes and he finds one and he buys that and he gets it home. And then as he's plugging it all in, he realizes there's an extra cable on this PSU and there's an extra slot on this motherboard. That seems weird and it's not posting. That's because at the time, his friend's hand-me-down was a Dell, which unfortunately, which unfortunately had a proprietary cable on it. So now he has gone from playing games normally to not being able to play them until he gets a motherboard, complete new PSU to use the GPU he already owns. So that is, I think, in the whole scheme of things, a huge deal for a lot of gamers who just want to play a game, even if they're taking the caveat of performance in some areas away. That's a big deal. And to see him go, wow, because he was getting really excited and we were like, wait, man, just wait. Because, the joke, PC gaming is easy. It's like, hey, I love my PC. I love it. However, I'm not going to sit here and lie to people and say that the upgrade curve like that doesn't happen. And if you ignore the motherboard thing, it would have still been the PSU and the GPU. It would have at minimum been 2 things.
Yep.
So there's that. And the idea that GPU and the PSU and everything needs to be there to run not only the games, but Windows or Linux or whatever you're going to run. There's other OS parts that are being turned on and off and doing all this. So
it's a huge overhead.
It's a huge overhead. Yeah. And no, I don't see it going away until maybe the next gen. And that's only if we don't shrink stuff down. And Sony or Microsoft, if they feel that they can make money on that hardware or having OEMs do it, they'll continue to do it. And if they don't, then they won't. Like, that's just it. If they don't, then they won't. It's not really.
No, that's right. I think integrations such like Discord, that's a really important one. Yeah. It's already there, but there are certain things you can't do. Like, for example, you can't watch a stream. Or I think you can now stream your game, right?
You can watch a stream on the Xbox, but you can't watch and play.
And play.
Yeah.
I kind of get that, to be honest. I wouldn't want processing power to go towards a picture-in-picture situation. I think that everything picture in picture belongs more so on the TV. Where I want my TV to, put Twitch if I'm watching Twitch or YouTube there. I think that's where it belongs more so. Mine doesn't have it, sadly, but I think yours does, right? You have the ability to.
I do. Yeah.
Picture in picture.
For picture in picture.
So I would like to see that more widespread. But yeah, I think it doesn't make sense on the console. We want it to be really good at the one thing. That still makes sense to me.
So let me get your honest feedback if you think I'm a dumbass and this is completely wrong. I've been fighting for Discord. I couldn't figure out why Discord has not been embraced on the consoles as much. And I was like, okay, so is it CPU power? Is it this or that? Why is Sony? However, now that I think about it, I firmly 100% feel like I understand why it has not. Because they always worried about them going public. And Discord has changed so much stuff in so many years and adjusted and had snafus and done these weird hardware updates and done these weird software codec updates that tying your entire ecosystem into Discord is, I believe now, a complete mistake. And so I actually have gone, even in the last month or so, as I've been watching Discord try more. They just tried something this morning. I don't know if you got the update. They're like, you can do this. They got quests in there. They're now going public, which means there's most likely, even my Discord, most likely server users or server owners are going to have to pay a probably pretty hefty amount to have. So like my patron right now, people jump in, Discord costs me nothing. How many times have we been in there, muxing 30 videos, and I'm like, why is this bandwidth not being paid? Somebody's going to have to pay for this at some point. Discord's made so many changes. Yeah. So the idea that Xbox, the idea that Sony or Nintendo is looking at Discord out of the side of their eye going, we're getting along now. But I firmly believe that there is a huge worry on their part that if they switch, imagine this. Imagine if everybody prepared for it to be free and they integrate it to the point to where you and I have asked for before, and suddenly they say, we now have a subscription service for Discord. And it is 10, 15, 20 bucks a month. That is huge and out of the box for all of the other, because that's not a streaming service. That's like you're talking in it and you're streaming. It's sort of replaced a lot of shit. So I now understand why the console makers are like, and they have been adding stuff. Dude, I don't know about you. I watch my memory. I have readouts for memory. Discord's getting fat. Now, I had been told Discord was getting fat prior, but they've added all the apps in, which all those apps need to load into Discord. That's an OS. Yeah. That's a no-no, by the way, for the OS makers on Xbox and PlayStation. They have very specific rules about apps and how much memory they can use because they only have a certain amount. So I don't know.
Yeah,
man.
It's now using similar amount to like Chrome.
Yeah. Oh, dude, it's ridiculous sometimes when you look at Discord randomly, and even if you don't have streams, you'll just be hanging out and it's been open for a while, and you go look in and you're like, whoa, Discord's pretty fat right now. Like what exactly has changed? Yeah. You realize maybe you've loaded up 6, 7 different, different apps on it. You maybe played some music on Spotify in it because that's ingrained into the Discord apps now in team groups or groups. Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know. And then there's still no front end for, let's say, an Xbox user to really easily make their own Discord. That's still a PC only thing. Like if you want to make your own Discord, you're still going to PC to create.
And similar to streaming.
Yeah.
Like you have the easy streaming to Twitch thing now or YouTube. But let's be honest, the quality is very lackluster. Yeah. So your resolution is going to be like 720p. You don't have any options. You can't do anything in terms of like, kitting out your stream. So it's going to look completely like just a game.
Yeah. And especially when you look at how small the RAM allocation is on a console. If you're at 2 gigs for Discord with 20 people streaming or whatever like that, that's 2 gigs. That's huge. It's huge enough that Microsoft's announcement about Windows was that they gained 2 gigs back for the handheld by slimming down Windows. So you can't say 2 gigs is big over here and then pretend magically it's not big over here. It's not how it fucking works. So I think that when you look at it, they'll stay their own thing. There's some stuff I'd love to see improved on the console OSs, like cleaning them up. PlayStation's ugly as fuck. You've got up menu, down menu, up menu, down menu. Like that thing's a disaster. Microsoft's is fucking vertical, then horizontal, then nested in. Like they're it's. I'm not saying Blades was better because everybody's like, oh, the 360 Blades OS was better. Listen, I still have a 360 that's got Blades on it. It's great, and it's a better version, but it's not the greatest OS we could see. I think console OSs, when they add shit, they just start throwing it everywhere. And pretty soon you're looking at OS going, how do I turn off my PlayStation? And I found, so that happened to me. I went into, because I hadn't played the PlayStation 5 for a while. So I was reviewing Death Stranding. And I was like, where the fuck is the off button? Like just going. And then I realized it was down, over, down instead of up. I was in
I wanted
going,
to like add a friend, but like, dude, it's nowhere. I have to go into my profile,
and there's
look at my
probably
existing,
a hotkey, but
like,
if you haven't done it in a while, you'll forget what the hotkey is.
Right.
You know.
And then later I found, okay, you go to your notifications, and then from there,
right.
But it's just not obvious.
We'll see these improvements. It's going to be great. I still think that they need to embrace voice commands. It would be great to be able to hit a button, hold a button, and be like, Xbox notifications, Xbox, add this friend. That kind of stuff would be great to see. But yeah, it's a good question. But I mean, I don't see anything that indicates that it will be. I see something that indicates that it will appear to be. And that's all it needs to do. Consoles need to appear as if they offer some of the facilities that you see on PC, but it doesn't have to be. Just as long as
I think stuff like the streaming is a big deal, because I know a lot of people would like to stream
into Discord
without needing a
Twitch.
PC, stream to Twitch. Because you can do that now, but it's so scuffed that nobody would run a serious stream from that.
And remember, they had Xbox One and PlayStation. They had a button, and you could just go there. And now you have to go through extra steps. They both removed it. I thought the same thing. I thought it was just going to be like boom, and that was going to be the way it works.
Because now we've figured out the streaming thing a lot. We know what people need in a stream. You got your camera. You might want like some events based on what's happening in your stream, yada yada.
Like a template.
All that stuff you could, like a template, like a simple, with some customizability. You could dial that in so it doesn't take a lot of resources. And I think that would be cool.
I feel that it would be cool. We'll probably see a great deal of these, but again, appearances will be deceiving, and people will assume that because they look a certain way, that will mean that they are identical, and then we'll probably get burned realizing they're not. What's up, Jet? Are you Jet 2030, but just an extra 5 from our Discord, or are you actually completely different Jet? $10 super chat. You guys rock. Thank you very much. I always get confused because there's some overlap, but we have a Jet 2030 I've played Apex with and a bunch of games with, and then I see that pop up. I'm like, I remember, I can't remember who it was, but somebody popped in, did the same thing, and I was like, oh, thanks for helping me edit. And they're like, I'm not that person, but it was the same first and last name. So I was just like, name. Thank you very much, Jet. We appreciate it. As always, it helps the channel. If you guys get a chance, check out the Patreon. You can continue conversations like this with Johnny and I. Mostly, they're just as dumb as this one. So you're not going to, I don't sell it well. Let's sell it. I'll sell it for 1 minute.
You can ask Carrick anything.
You can ask me
anything. You'll most likely
I was
respond.
trying to go for an uncomfortable pause, and you got a full 10 seconds into that uncomfortable pause, which I salute you, because most people would be like, well, why is he not saying anything?
You know what they say, you have to become comfortable with silence. I'm not at Lex Friedman levels yet. But...
right. Or Craig Ferguson. So I would say, I will say this. I will give myself one kudo. I don't know if there's any other, whether it's a positive, I will not say, but I don't think there's almost any other creator who's in their Discord as much as I am. How about that? Whether that's a positive or negative is up to you guys. But I will say I'm always in there, and I do consider that to be a fantastic thing.
That is, because you're very accessible. Like some days we've been in a chat at my nighttime. I went to sleep, slept a full night, and then in the morning, you guys were still in there.
Yeah. Dude, we had a conversation or two about tech, and it went fucking 4 hours. I mean, Amutski and I were talking about tech, and then it was like, okay, and then Turum came in, and Turum's lives in Australia. So Turum has a whole different idea of tech and what the cost of a game is, right? Because he lives just like you do. You guys live in different, but his is really notoriously hit hard for finances. So he went off for like an hour about why when somebody says something about cost, you might think it's more or less depending on where you are. Went off. Then we had somebody else jump in, and they spent like an hour and a half talking about horror movies. And dude, it's fantastic. That's like, it's my favorite thing. It's my favorite thing. And also shout out to Telegram and the folks who are on there. I got a couple of your questions and stuff like that. I definitely appreciate the spread out and people being everywhere. We're going to try to hit everything. Won't always work. Jay Reaper said, the awkward silence made me join so fast. $5 super. Yeah. What's up, Jay? Yeah, we do. Jay's one of them. I'm sure he would admit, but a lot of people are, where you will get people in a chat. We have a quiet chat on purpose, and they'll get in. You can hear the flutter in their voice because they're nervous about not talking. And so they're trying to say something. And I'll just be like,
yeah,
it truly is a quiet chat. You can talk, no issues, but it is okay if you just want to stream and relax. And you hear some chatter on the side. Maybe you don't for an hour or two. Dude, there was one time where I was talking to these guys for a full half an hour and realized my mic was dead. I was talking. I was like, these guys, and I was giving them kudos. I was like, I just want to say, man, how much I really appreciate you guys understanding the quiet chat. You know, it doesn't always have to be filled. I'm glad you guys are enjoying yourselves and just hanging out, blah, blah, blah. And then I asked a question. Nobody answered. And I'm like, well, that's odd. So that's another one. I was like, hey, what are you playing? Nothing. And then I looked at the light on mic. It was off. It'd been off for like a full 2 hours. I was all, damn, they missed everything. That was awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good to realize that you it's not your responsibility to make a conversation happen. Because for me, because I was like always streaming and stuff, sometimes I felt like it's my burden to keep the conversation going.
Right.
Because sometimes I would have Reg on, and he's a bit like a man of few words.
Yeah.
You kind of have to, drag it out of him sometimes. And sometimes in those chats, I felt like, I kind of have to
egg it on.
I have to egg him on, but it's been nice to get used to just, I'm just another guy in here. We're all just hanging out, and if there isn't anything to be said, that's all good. We're just hanging.
What I love for even YouTube chat, you'll go, not many people chat, and then suddenly somebody will mention a horror movie or something, and then people go off for like 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah,
it sparks all. And that happens in here. It happens. Yeah. It's happened when we were on Twitch streams, and then it just dies down. Everybody's getting a sandwich. People are relaxing. They're watching.
Yeah.
I think Twitch streamers in particular, and I've noticed it with you much less now, but when you first came in, I do something different because I'm YouTube. Even streams on YouTube are different than Twitch. Twitch is emoticons and blah, 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 and blah, 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 and, all this stuff. Twitch feels to me like Japanese cyberpunk movies make you feel the future would have been. With like cat emojis and diamonds exploding. And then YouTube
just
chat.
Spam.
Yeah, YouTube chat a lot of times is like, hey, man, I haven't talked to you in a while. What's up? Nothing. Okay. And
cool.
That's it. And then you just move on. Yeah, it's definitely interesting to see all the dichotomy of how each one treats the medium differently, which is very cool in a way. Moving on from there, though, and definitely appreciate the super chats, appreciate support of any kind. Oh, by the way, if you are a Spotify listener or whatever, remember that you should be seeing half chats, or half podcasts. Those should be like Tuesdays. I missed this one because I was doing Death Stranding, but I will do another one. So if you just show up for this, you watch us, I totally appreciate it. If you want more podcasts, though, ACG, the best gaming podcast, we do a half podcast. It's like, Tuesdays. It's about an hour. Last one was 2, I think. Moving on from there, what do we got for video game news? Anything else? Because if not, I want to query you on a couple scientific things.
I didn't find any other news, so I'm happy to
So you watched
chat about
Sarah
anything
Walker.
else too.
So did Void. I got Void to watch it. Void, dude, this is what's so crazy. Void at times makes me feel like he's the grumpy old man of the Discord. Like his back hurts. He's got this. It's hot. You know, he's like, oh my God, I hate the heat, blah, blah, blah. He's like me. And the last couple weeks, we've had multiple chats where we just sit down and talk about science for like 4 hours. And it's been awesome. He's like us in that way, where he's like super interested. And I talked him into watching Cool Worlds, and I talked him into watching one that seems quite difficult, which was Sarah Walker talking about assembly. However, listen to this. He gets done. He says, I've never felt so stupid in my life. And I said, well, all they're really trying to do is blah, blah, blah. And he's like, oh, that's actually what I got out of it. I just didn't realize that's, you know, what I was supposed to get out of it. I thought I was supposed to get more. And I'm like, no, she's just using words that fits with him and her terminology. Yeah. But that was great. What did you think of it?
I'm still trying to wrap my head around assembly theory. So, like, for people who aren't familiar, the whole conversation about how life got started and how we could try to test that in the lab, right? Like, can we reproduce that in some way? Which is an unsolved question. Like, some people are spearheading that Sarah Walker is working in that field. The guy she works with, British guy, he's also been around in the podcast. Blanking on his name now. He's a very like classy British guy. Right? He's got the villain haircut.
Yeah, he's got the villain haircut.
He's a James Bond villain. Lee Cronin.
It is Lee. Yeah.
It's pretty hard to wrap your head around exactly what they're trying to do, because they, to some extent, they can't explain to you what they are doing exactly, right? It's all metaphors, and similar to astrophysics too, like to some level, you can only fully get it with the math. You know, when they talk about like a fourth dimension and beyond, you can't really see that stuff in your mind. It's more so about looking at the math, and it makes sense there.
Yeah.
So I haven't gotten a lot out of it. What's your read in terms of like how special life is? Has there been any conclusion? Like, do we expect it to be pretty commonplace out there in the universe? Or is it, do we think it's something really, really special?
I don't know. I do think that their explanation, so I did grasp it, but I do understand why but I've also not just watched her, I read the book. But I do like the way she described it, which I thought was very awesome, which is if you see the word abracadabra, and to a person like you or I, you would count up the letters and it would be like, I don't know, 16 or whatever. That would be the assembly index. That would be the complexity of that. But what they're saying is, if you go A is 1, B is 1, and you start going through, when abra repeats, that is not 1, 2, 3 again. It is 1. So it crunches that data down. So instead of all those added up plus all those added up again, assembly theory is like, and it crunches that back down until you get to more discrete letters.
Clustering it.
And the idea is that while we may see some complex chemical structures, because there's chemicals, they're not remember, they're still describing about space, but what they're doing is from a chemical aspect, which is nuts, because chemical and its structure is far more complex by a billionfold than atoms. It's insane. She describes that in the thing, that like even chirality and adjusting the chemical structures, you can get the same chemical in a billion different ways, which is why pro hormones for the longest period of time were sellable at GNC. Pro hormone is basically a chemical that's testosterone, but it's not. And it only turns testosterone when it touches your stomach acid, because they've tested to find out which chemicals in your stomach would transfer to testosterone. So they were selling these. So you're getting steroids right off the street for legal at your GNC. Pro hormones became a huge deal for a while. And you were getting basically these chemicals that you couldn't say, don't sell that, because the chemical structure had never been identified by anybody as testosterone, as tren, as decadianabol. They were these alternative chemicals that when they adjusted. So what's going on with assembly theory that I love is the idea that you can look around and you can say these chemicals are basic, but at some point a Intel APU is complex to the point that it couldn't fall together via chemical structures on its own. And so assembly theory is the idea that can we identify the base level, and then now there's a gap. And that gap past that indicates created by life, which is not too far away from people looking at other planets and trying to identify using their instruments if there are certain chemical gases in their air that do not have a normal natural creation structure. So we're looking at this planet and we're like, whoa, there's some Jeremy farts in that atmosphere. Those aren't created by natural, chemical structures. Those are created by a bunch of Jeremys, a bunch of Carricks running around. That's life. So in a way, in all honesty, there's a lot that I think why Cool Worlds is good, because that's what his job is exoplanets and all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of very cool parallels between what Sarah and those guys are talking about. But when you come to planets, I think in all honesty, in the last 3 weeks, we have probably now seen the largest change to astrophysics, astronomy ever in history. And I think that it'll probably be changed so much in the next 3 to 4 months and 3 to 4 years that it's very difficult to know if what we're seeing is even real. Have you heard about the big change where the Hubble, basically the Hubble tension versus the new study for supernova and galaxies being different? So the idea originally was you look at a supernova, it's your candle, that's how far away something is.
Yeah.
And about a couple of years ago, there were people saying, what if time was slightly different when the galaxy was small, just exploded, and it changed? And the big problem has always been dark matter. And dark matter has always felt stupid to me, because you're like, oh, dark matter's a thing. And you're like, where is that thing? And they hand waved around it. And they were like, oh, dark matter, yeah, it's out there. No one can see it, but it's what's pulling the universe apart. And what now the studies are showing is that it is possible that, at least as far as timescape theory in particular goes into this, but the idea is that what we see now, completely different time-wise than what the original universe is. And if that's true, you would not need dark matter. So have you ever heard of the universe being either flat or a saddle?
Yep.
The saddle's always confused me, but weirdly enough, the saddle makes more sense in this particular situation, because if a saddle is furled up and then the Big Bang happens, as the saddle unfurls, it pulls. And that would be what's pulling the universe to make it bigger. And it would not require dark matter. And now, I mean, even the Cool Worlds guy, one of the great things is he had stated very clearly, he is like, the big problem with what he was trying to do when he was younger is that all of his professors were like, you know what, technically, we're not really in a discovery phase. We're in a phase of just perfecting our science. Now, in the last 3 weeks, last 3 months, last 3 years, it's changed to the possibility that not only have we not perfected it, but all these other side things, multidimensionality, even the holographic, all those were there to describe dark matter. They were all there to cover this big gap in cosmology that made no sense. And cosmology 3.0, it was Professor Whitmore, not professor, sorry, he's a researcher. Their ideas indicate that that's not the truth, and that what we couldn't explain for the longest period of time may not even be the right way to even look at it anymore. What's cool about that is, number one, old sciences are new. That's awesome. So people who thought this science is sort of fleshed out, I'm going to go to this other science over here because I'm starting out. Now, those old science, all of those things that people have been describing might need either to be kiboshed completely or completely revamped. And I love the idea of that, because it means that that's just a shit ton more discovery, and looking at something and saying it works because we were wrong from the very basics. And some people argue this for sure, but what they can't argue is the difference, the delta between what they're seeing with the Hubble tension and the new survey, which is different. And they usually have like a level, like a 1 to 10, where they're like, okay, if it's a 1 difference, if it's a 2, if it's a 3,
Yeah.
If it's a 4, it's 5. This is a 5. So, or it's a 4.5 or a 5 difference, meaning everybody, including people who don't agree with the other stuff, are looking at it going, fuck, That is way not what we expected, because this number does not in any way, shape, or form agree with this other number, which indicates that there is a massive misunderstanding. And that's why even on Earth, the Cool Worlds guy was saying different researchers will find slightly different light speeds or distances when they were doing research, and they always shined it on as an instrument failure or dirt, not dirt, real dirt, but like dirt in the data, static in the data, you know, slight corruption of the data over
variance,
such long,
whatever.
But now they're saying this one, which its numbers are right, this one's numbers are right for what it was checking. Now they're like, oh shit, you know, and that to me is fucking awesome, because I grew up on dark matter. Like I grew up on and I remember going dark matter. How is a scientist saying, oh, it's over there? Like they sounded like my dad telling me to mow the lawn. You know, it's just like, oh, it's over there. Go do that over there. It's like, well, that's not a very discreet way of describing things. So I'm excited.
So the whole thing with dark energy was this big gap.
Huge. It's just
not
a gap.
It's not that like, it's a gap where we couldn't really account why, you know, galaxies are moving further away
and
from each other
as they go
and accelerating, right? So it's like, it's not only we're moving away from each other, but we're also accelerating over time. And that was the explanation was, hey, there must be this dark energy that, you know, we can't really detect, but, you know, it's underlying this. And I think it's called like timescapes, this new idea.
Yeah, Whitmore's timescapes is just that at different timescapes, different scales, it was completely different. And so the reason why all the readings are off is we're looking right now. And right now, some numbers appear right because they all take in right now into account. But a billion years ago, and by the way, guess what? Go all the way back to where this originally started coming up, even in my old science books, was that they could not figure out why some stars appeared older than the universe. And there was this huge confusion. And they were like, okay, well, we're going to adjust this. We're going to adjust that. But then the brown dwarf people were like, there's some weird numbers here, but we're going to shine that on. And then you'd have the red giant people who were like, wait a minute, there's some weird shit here, but we're going to shine that on. And every single group has had this. Every group, by the way, has had this odd thing where there's been a bunch of data that didn't correspond, that was always shined on as it must be invisible, and like for whatever reason, this invisible thing out there, because that's the only thing that made sense because we're looking now. And the problem with looking now is it only works to a certain distance, and then you're looking way in the past. And that's when shit started changing. And that's like what I liked about the Cool Worlds guys. He explained it quite eloquently, was that when he started, they were telling him, well, we figured this out, we figured that out. And he said he got very disappointed with his career choice. He was like, oh, damn, I guess I'll go to exoplanets because that's something. But he's like, I sort of
that's fresh.
That's fresh.
New.
And now the idea that everybody's going to look at this, and I love see, this is the thing, man, ego versus confidence. I love that scientists are like, well, okay, if that's right, we'll move to that. We'll check it. We'll verify that that's the new way to go. I love that. I think that's cool. And to sprout off from assembly theory, obviously that's a bit of a jump, but it's not as connected to all of this, but it is quite interesting to see that people are coming up with different ideas to like sort of like, to me, assembly index. I like the idea of it. I don't know if it explains anything, but they were even trying to explain that it may not explain a bunch. It's more about being able to talk about it so that we can all like be like, okay, let's talk about it in a different way. That's a little bit more. If the assembly index for this is 10 and we have something that's 20 and it's a fucking Intel supercomputer, then that's probably created by something that had an index that was high to create it, to basically compound indexes until you get to something that cannot be created by nature, no matter how much time it has. Like a perfectly symmetry bound fucking Intel processor. Like that would be really weird to find a tree that was dropping AMD video cards. You'd be like, I don't think that's probably what's going to happen here. So,
that's probably not. It does tie into some of the space exploration stuff, at least like looking for life in other planets. Because if we understand the process of life originating better, we can also understand what we're looking for.
Yeah.
Because right now we're really only looking for, carbon-based, like a similar footprint to what we know. We don't really know what's possible in terms of like different configurations. Could we have a different way to replicate in DNA instead of the RNA system that came up? Like, is that just the only game in town for evolution to take place?
Dude, and isn't it weird too when you look at it? Like Copernicus theory is like wherever you are is the average. But the problem with average is everybody took it to mean you're not special. This is the average. Do you know how you get an average? By taking numbers that are variably much higher and much lower and averaging them. So the idea that Earth happens to be in a place that is not average, nobody likes, but now they're starting to go, is it possible that because of the way our galaxy is set up, the difference between spaces so that you don't get smashing asteroids killing every bit of life, you don't get blah, 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 you don't get this, you don't get that. Is it possible that we're looking at a situation where, yeah, we are in the average, but we are distinctly not average? Wherever we are is a safety zone. I mean, look at how exoplanets, every single time they look, they're like, you know what we have that nobody else does? Smaller inner planets. Every single other place that they look at planets, they have giant Jupiter-sized planets where Earth is. And they're like, is it, and you've heard stories where it's like, did Mars come in from the outer solar system, get caught?
Yeah.
That helped. And then you hear the story, oh, Jupiter cleans up asteroids. Now there's people saying, is it possible? Yes, it could. Or does it bring them in? And actually, in any of these other solar systems, if you have a big one near the sun, it's too chaotic to have life have the chance to form because it's bringing in asteroids and it's just continually pounding the inner planets even far after they're made. And for us, it's completely the opposite. We have like the smalls and then the bigs out there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's awesome stuff, man. Like, I think that shit's great. I also thought compression theory was pretty cool, but that was about data structures in the universe. That one is hard to understand. I'll send you a link to this guy. But his is like,
cool.
His is like the idea that the universe loves compression and it compresses down data into particular places. And is that an indicator of the simulation theory and calculations of the universe and stuff?
Yeah.
Very cool. Sarah's awesome, man. She gets excited. It
Yeah.
was, I think she's a phenomenal talker, but she also, since they're making the theory, she doesn't have the confidence sometimes. She'll be like, well, that's a good question. Maybe. And that can throw you off going, am I thinking, by the way, this is a perfect replication of the dark energy theory. She'll be like, well, maybe blah, blah, blah. And you're like, that's where all other science is right now. Well, maybe something else. And you're like, well, should we believe? Yeah, it's awesome stuff, man. Any other science things you've been following?
Not too much. I've been looking at a lot of Cool Worlds stuff this week.
I love that guy.
He had some cool ideas about the dark forest conversation, where like aliens are going to be motivated to annihilate us basically in all scenarios, because that's like from a game theoretic, almost like a prisoner's dilemma where you're screwed if you cooperate, you're screwed if you don't.
But if you don't cooperate and kill, the chance of you continuing is higher. So,
right.
Yeah. The one thing that bothers me is that people don't always mention that the idea that the day before we turned on our first radio telescopes and radio dishes to hear other civilizations could have been the last day they ever transmitted. So because it doesn't transmit forever. And so, or the idea that the day we stop could be the day another civilization turns on their system. And the idea that we're in these little discrete slices of time. So you think that is one thing she described, which I thought was awesome, which is that every experience we have is actually a size in time, not just like a timeline, but the size of time, and that it grows bigger and that it can affect other things. Because I've always thought of it as a timeline with a little dot, because I watched a lot of World War II documentaries. So whenever they talk about time, I'm like, boom, boom, boom. And she's like, whoa, no. Like time in and of itself the space has grown, and so your ability to capture data is bigger in particular times. So we say, oh, nobody else is calling out. It's like, first of all, it takes millions of years to get here. Second, it would have to be within an insanely small slice. And then you also hear people saying, oh yeah, if a universe, or if a group could create robots, they could take over the universe in a particular amount of time. And that is such an, I love the idea of it, but dude, it ignores politics. It ignores changes of leadership. Imagine if you would have to have a perfect civilization to say, our job is to send out robots all over the universe to replicate themselves, blah, 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 right? You'd have to do all that. But if they also were misreading where items are in space, they would send all their probes to the wrong spot, because that item that we see now, even if we have our calculations of where they were or where they're going to be, would be distinctly off. So if you're like, we're going to send somebody to Sagittarius, and you do so, if all of these ideas are wrong, there'll be nothing there, because our ideas of the math and how much difference there is between what we thought versus timescapes theory is that you would send a ship, be like, all right, man, we're going to send a ship off. And you'd be like, fuck, our calculations are off. I mean, we can't even land a rocket on a planet in our own solar system without cratering it. Like, what was that? They did meters instead of feet or whatever, and they cratered that one rocket. They were like, our bad. I mean, that's within like a distance that we can, talk to somebody within 7 minutes or 14 minutes or 21 minutes, or talk to, a probe. And we're talking galactic scale stuff. It's awesome shit, man.
Yeah, what seems to be true is that if there was a like galactic civilization out there with Dyson spheres, these giant like spheres around suns, capturing all the energy and everything, we would be able to see something like that if it existed in our observable universe.
You would if they had the material. So that goes into the solar system thing. If they had the material to build it, yes. But now that we're looking at solar systems and finding that the rocky planets are out and the gas planets are centered, those items, those drones wouldn't have the material to create a Dyson sphere anyway. That's also under the assumption that you would desire to go somewhere and cover that star. And there's a lot of human-like ideas around that. How about this? What if their length of life is longer because they don't have DNA? So DNA has your telerize, it snips your DNA every time it replicates. That's aging. So let's say that the aging doesn't occur for them in the same way it occurs for us. It's something different. It takes longer, or it's only damaged by solar radiation or something like that. Or what if they're super short lifespan? Then the idea of creating a Dyson sphere is solely within Dyson's idea of a Dyson sphere. I've always found it weird that Dyson spheres were some kind of like holy religious thing, because a guy who made a vacuum cleaner said it was. By the way, I'm just teasing him. Like, obviously.
No relation to the...
I'm just, the idea that like, that must be the way.
Yeah, somehow that became a standard thing that we might look for.
In everything. It's in sci-fi books. Yeah. It's in movies. The Halo is quite literally a ripoff of the Dyson sphere. It's just, instead it's habitable.
And it's a part of SETI too, like the search for extraterrestrial.
Yeah.
They look for Dyson sphere.
Do you think
funny.
Do you think we're already having, you have Stephen Hawking who's like, dude, what are we doing? Why are we phoning everybody and saying we're here? Like, that seems quite dangerous. A civilization that gets to a certain point can use all of the resources around them. And a civilization that could travel, let's say, 0.9% the speed of light without fruiticiding the humans inside or their race inside because of gravity and inertia. Do you think that Earth would be where they would come? Do you think about it this way? Look at how small Earth is in the vast universe. Do you feel like that we need to worry? I mean, need to worry is different. Maybe they're just colonial and they go wherever and they destroy whatever because maybe they have a history of that, or maybe their own civilization has caused that. But I've always found that a little odd to be like, worry about it, because it's like, dude, seriously? If they come here and destroy us, they're probably going to figure it out. I think the Cool Worlds guy said that anyway. If we're worried about calling out, we should already assume that they have technology to figure out we're here anyway, whether it be satellites, gravitational lensing for using a telescope that can see 50,000 times farther than it should because of gravitational lensing, which always confuses
Right.
me.
The radio message we sent, decades ago is not going to be the.
Hey,
the
buddy,
problem.
that's Star Trek's motion picture #1 is about that. That's the entire crux of that movie, is that they send out Voyager. It goes out, an alien race finds it, mistakenly calls it V'ger, and decides to come and investigate humans. And when it does, throughout the entire movie, you don't realize it's Voyager because they call it V'ger, and it's using a human to translate its like godlike entity and figure out what humans are to Captain Kirk and Spock. And then they figure out it's actually the original probe that went out. An alien race found it, tracked where it was coming from, and beelined to us. It's possible. How would you find that little tiny particle of metal that in no way, shape, or form would differentiate itself from space debris that galaxies are full of, and be like, that's for sure coming from it? I mean, I don't know. It boggles my mind, the computational power of figuring that out. I think aliens probably turn inwards, Johnny. I really do. I think they go to VR, and I don't mean VR like headsets. I think that like at some point a race would be like, galactic distances are so big, we'll send some shit out, but our populace, we got to make sure they're safe and happy. So you create a simulation, or you create
it's
a
some
safe
baller space. VR, like just an alternate virtual reality.
Yeah, it's awesome stuff, man. It's cool shit.
I mean, there isn't too much interesting on Earth to take. Like, what are you going to take from
We're
Earth?
one of the few planets we've found where the planet is, or one of the few solar systems where we're close to the sun. So I guess that is one. But liquid water.
If life itself is interesting.
Yeah, life itself is interesting. Yeah, what if life is rare? So when they do see some kind of fluorocarbon by using their gas sensors, and like, oh, that's special there. Maybe that kind of thing. But yeah, it's an odd situation. I don't think aliens would look like us anyway, right? Like, dude, come on.
I hope not, man. It would be so disappointing if we find out that like the life as we know it is the only game in town, and like the only species out there are, just evolved in the same ways we have here, with the same type of replication, same chemistry.
But even if it's the same chemistry, a mole is what we came from. A fucking mammal, like a little grub. So not a grub, that's a worm, but you get so it's like their replication would have to have first it would have to have the same exact kind of resources. It would have to have a cataclysm that removed one and returned it to the little mole guy that created us. And not to be rude, we don't look like us. When you look at if you took 1,000 humans and you put them all down, bipedal, obviously, but there's a ton of variation in people. And we're only looking at a slice of 60 years if you took people from 1 to 60, right?
Yeah, if you take The Rock, that's a different human.
There you go. You take The Rock and Warwick Davis. Warwick Davis is the actor from Willow. So if you took Willow, right, and you took The Rock, and that's only within the span of 60 years, and then you go back 200 years and you grab, one of our ancestors, and you start going back farther and farther, pretty soon you would have to line up perfectly in years, and you'd have to have catastrophic situations that occurred at the same time, that altered DNAs. And I don't know. I mean, maybe bipedal. I had heard that bipedal is probably one of the better ways to mutate due to its ability to climb and get over rocks, for legged, I guess is what I should say, especially with land. And then the other thing that they were talking about in Cool Worlds, which was very cool, which is that the more we look at it, the more we're starting to realize that shorelines are required for life, which I had never thought of. But shorelines they offer safety. They offer the exchange between water and land. They offer changing of nutrients when it goes up and down, which requires a moon. And they were explaining all these things about shorelines, like could an ocean create life in the same way we think? And it's like, if it's an ocean world, they're missing a good deal of the friction that's created that actually does spawn a ton of the mixing of chemicals. And I was like, damn, I had not ever...
That makes sense, yeah.
Dude,
I hadn't thought about
that
shores.
Together. Yeah, Yeah. And there's entire scientific, discussions around just the shorelines are required to create complex life. And I was like, fuck, that makes sense. I'd not thought of it, but like, that's awesome. And so a water world wouldn't have it, or a desert world like Dune, would they create a bipedal life, or would it look like a chameleon? Because a chameleon is far better suited for desert life than a human is, or a lizard style life. Would they look like lizard man?
I wonder how much of it is just an accidental, like we just happened to, evolve into the bipedal thing, but there's nothing saying that maybe six arms wouldn't work really well, or like 4 legs.
4 legs seems to work
and
quite
2
well
arms, like
for a lot of animals, right? Or dolphins, who
Yeah, what if we had like 4 legs and then 2 arms, so we get the best of both worlds?
That's why I chose it
Centaur.
as my centaur, man. What if a centaur shows
there you
up
go.
and it's like he can run fast and put together his Intel motherboard?
Yeah,
just saying, man. Yeah, I don't know. I have a feeling though that like, I don't think in my time we'll ever find out. But I also wonder if sizes are so big that we never will. It's still awesome to study and should be studied. I'm just saying, I'm wondering if, like if it's so far and so wide, or that squids take over every planet because they're scary as shit. Dude, imagine a water world where you can't escape squids. What a fuckery.
Squid planet.
Squid planet.
Well,
a little brain in each arm because they're so complex, just fucking squirting through life. Just constantly hunting you down. Yeah, because I mean, other than whales, they just don't have a competitor.
Yeah.
And I feel like
sperm whales are the only ones.
Sperm whales. Yeah, sperm whales are pretty baller. What's funny is, Johnny, would you have ever looked at a sperm whale and been like, that's a baller? That's a baller
Absolutely
beast right
not.
Nah.
They have like flat teeth.
Yeah, dude, and it looks like like the weird barrel mouth underneath, and you're like, and then you find out that's why, because that's how they hunt, and you're like, oh, right. I see. Like I not apex hunter, but they look like your really obese best friend who shows up and just wants your Cheetos, and it's like, no, man, that guy's
like the most damage they can do to you is ram you with their giant body.
Okay, that'd be pretty scary though. They're pretty, and they sleep vertically. Like that's a baller creature, but I would never have looked at it and been like, oh yeah, that thing's eating fucking squid. Squid scare the shit out of me. Squid, octopus, platypus, anything with an us at the end.
I think the only creature that could fuck with a sperm whale was the megalodon. That's extinct now, obviously, but it was this giant ass shark with really sharp teeth and about the size of a sperm whale. That thing would.
You see the picture where they're standing inside of the like the jaw that has been like replicated from the jaw pieces, and people are just standing up in it. Yeah, that thing was just swimming, and you know what? They're probably lazy, just swimming with their mouth open because they know they'll catch something. But I mean, I don't know what the speed of that fucking thing was, but it looks scary as shit. And they look. Lucitan says, "I love cuttlefish." Okay. It's just Lucitan.
Yeah, that's pretty random. But
that is. But cuttlefish are pretty cool. What's another weird creature? I like platypus. I dig the shit out of platypus.
Oh yeah. I like those jellyfish that can renew their cells. So they effectively could live forever if they, do it well. That's some insane biology, right?
Yeah, lobster, I believe, are the same way, where they just don't, die. They die, but they don't die of old age. They just die of stuff. Because I think they had found one that was like, I can't remember, like 120 years old. By, I don't know if how the fuck they date them, or if they ask them a question and hope they write down their age. But yeah, the idea of shit
Can we just hook up AI to CRISPR and have it figure out these complex genetics of like the renewing cells? Just be like, hey, snip that from the jellyfish and copy paste that into us.
Do you know what I think is going to actually extend life? It's a drug that we've had for 50 years, I think. It's called metformin. So it was originally created to balance your blood sugar levels. A lot of, if you're diabetic, you can take it. Hypoglycemia, hyperglycemia, basically levels out your insulin. However, listen to this. In the last like 20 years, They have done so many studies on what that shit does. It lowers the incidence of prostate cancer. It increases the ability of like the body to stave off aging effects. You should go read about that stuff. It is nuts. And it's just one of those chemicals that they've had for the longest period of time. They were just giving it to people for the one thing it does dramatically well. And it does do it dramatically well. But now they're like, oh shit, this could be used for a ton of stuff. I think it'll be all chemical based, not a alien. Like if an alien race pops up, they'll probably do the same thing as we do, adjust our chemicals with other chemicals. So like you could see a race show up who's figured out. So somebody said Tom Cruise is the answer. Okay, let me tell you something.
Yeah,
I thought he was. He is not anymore. Go look at the newest pictures of William Shatner talking to Neil deGrasse Tyson. William is 94, I believe.
Damn.
He out-talks Neil deGrasse Tyson. And it's whole my point that obese, angry white men live forever. Like I feel like that's just, oh shit. Did I disconnect? You still there, Johnny?
We're coming back. I can hear you.
Okay. I had an NVIDIA drop right there. Stay where you are. I'm going to switch this out.
Okay. Yeah, no worries. Yeah, it's crazy how sturdy some of these older guys are, man. It blows my mind.
Dude, William Shatner, Leonard Nimoy lived to be pretty old, didn't he?
With Tom Cruise, it's also fascinating how the guy is he's still basically an athlete.
Tom
at
Cruise
his
in the
age,
last movie
like-
was pretty nuts, yeah. But Leonard Nimoy lived to be pretty old. He's Spock.
Yeah.
He was pretty, and he was just doing a lot of smoking and shit and still looked good. Oregon Fresh says you're right. Shatner hasn't aged. I'm telling you guys straight up. If you go look at the William Shatner thing, it's now fat don't crack. That's the joke. So his wrinkles don't show as much. But I'm telling you, that blew me away. I honestly have never been that confused until I thought that picture was from 25 years ago. He is 30 years older than Neil deGrasse Tyson, and I would say roughly looks the same or a little younger. It is a weird.
That's insane.
It's insane. Yeah. Obese, cranky ass white guys seem to live for a long time. Because Wilford Brimley, the guy from the diabetes, maybe that's what he was doing. Maybe Wilford Brimley was freebase and metformin on the side. What else do we got before we wrap it up? Do we have any cool stuff? Are you streaming anything tomorrow?
I'm not sure yet, actually. We'll see. I might just hang out with you guys in the Discord too.
We'll be in there. We're gonna be playing some games.
Just delivering some packages this weekend. That's it.
Oh, dude, I thought that was slang for
in Death Stranding.
I fucking was so confused. I thought it was slang for something super dirty.
Laying packages.
I'm delivering loads. And I'm like, whoa.
Multiple
loads. Dedicated beer, $2. Hey, off to work. Here's more money. Thank you very much. If you guys get a chance, when this is over, I'm not joking. It does help if you leave a comment for the podcast. If you go to iTunes, Spotify, it'll be up in about 4 hours. And Spotify and Patreon will have it ad-free. I have to take it, extract it, but it should be up ad-free in the next 2 or 3 hours. That'll be it for us, unless Johnny has anything else to randomly add.
That's it from me as well.
Trust me,
Good
4
chat.
hours is not normal for us. That's twice. We will curb it. I thought we were done a while ago, but then shit happens. So anyway, peace out, everybody. I hope you guys all have an excellent week. Thanks to Johnny for probably poisoning himself by not peeing, by not going to the bathroom.
I'm working on the bladder capacity, you know?
You know what? Hey, there's nothing wrong with that, man. We can get you a little valve. You can just fucking hook it up and, not have to worry about peeing at all. Peace out, everybody.